Not content with having Democrats deal with the marketing shame of the infamous pajama boy, Republican consultants come up with a pajama boy type ad the GOP can call its very own. Dick Morris and Ari Fleischer give us their take on this political give and take. In our second hour, Ralph Reed joins us to talk about the value of values voters in the upcoming midterms. And also ahead, Boeing builds the 777 jetliner. Now a source close to that company believes the missing Malaysia Airlines plane is on the ground in Pakistan. Lignet's Fred Fleitz will offer his analysis in Hour 3. And America's Forum? Well, it starts right now. And we welcome you into America's Forum for this Tuesday. I'm J.D. Hayward.
And I'm John Bachman. Great to be with you, J.D., and everybody at home. Let's get straight over to today's top headlines right now. The search for missing Malaysia Flight 370 continues today, and it now appears some of that speculation about the pilots has been thwarted. Could the plane have flown to Pakistan, a Taliban-controlled area? We'll take a closer look at that. An exclusive new report we heard J.D. talking about with our news partners over at Lignet.com.
Meantime, Vladimir Putin has now signed a document to make the annexation of Crimea, quote, official, at least in his eyes. This as the Russian president and his ilk shrug off the latest round of sanctions. Vice President Biden and President Obama heading to Poland this week to shore things up with our NATO allies. Will it do anything to halt Putin? That will be the focus of our discussion with foreign policy expert Paul Gregory coming up.
And also, Mitt Romney is out with a new op-ed in the Wall Street Journal. The former presidential nominee says President Obama's failure to act has diminished the global respect for the United States in the wake of the Ukrainian crisis. And joining us right now here on the set to discuss today's top issues, J.D. Hayworth and political analyst Dick Morris. Dick, we were looking at the situation in Ukraine. Putin now officially making the annexation of Crimea official in his eyes, at least. Where do we go from here?
There are 3 steps we ought to take. 1, put the missiles in Poland and the Czech Republic that Obama pulled out in the first couple of months of his presidency, that canceled plans to deploy. Secondly, pass legislation lifting the administrative bureaucracy on exporting natural gas. And finally, complete construction of the 27 planned liquefaction facilities to transform gas into a liquid. Once it's in a liquid, you put it on a tanker and you send it anywhere in the world. Russia's power in Europe is not military. It's based on the fact that they provide Europe with 1/4 of the natural gas and Eastern Europe with half of it. If the United States made good on a threat to begin to sell gas to Europe, it would break Russian power and put Putin out of business.
All right, we'll have more on the president and vice president's visit to Europe coming up here later in the show, but let's get to the top story, J.D.
And it deals with politics. Has the GOP found its own pajama boy? The party's just released a new round of ads featuring a young man named Scott Greenberg.
You can't help the unemployed by hurting the people that could employ them. I'm a Republican because my friends need a paycheck, not an empty promise.
Well, J.D., we might be seeing a lot of Scott this election year. The GOP is using him, his leather jacket, his bold-rimmed glasses, and his pretty cool haircut there to try and find new voters. But will it work? And doesn't Scott kind of look a little bit familiar?
What I was talking about at the outset of the program, Pajama Boy, the Democrats' poster boy from Christmas break. Well, you see him side by side right along with our new friend Scott. Is the latest Republican effort to court hipsters and people other than old white dudes like me really going to work? Dick Morris, you have had an interesting career as a political consultant on both sides of the aisle. This approach by the Republicans to say, look, we're hip, we're young, is it going to work?
It's stupid. First of all, gas prices are going down. The other ad is about gas prices. And it doesn't rank in the top 5 or 6 of worries of young people. The issues that do work, Obamacare and the NSA, they're not touching. Secondly, it is a myth to believe that the Republican Party is in trouble with white young people. Among the millennial generation, 18 to 33, the whites in that generation are were just as strongly for Romney as the whites over 33. The reason that Obama carried the millennials by a very large margin is that 43% of them are non-white compared to about 28% of the general population. It's a racial issue, ethnic issue, not an age issue.
And it seems like, Dick, if the GOP really wanted to court younger voters right now, that they would focus on the topic that we all know is the #1 topic, not just on millennials' minds, but also on everyone in America's mind right now, that being jobs and the economy. Why doesn't the GOP talk about or talk more about what it's doing to create jobs for these young people? I know they try to do that in this ad, but it doesn't really come across.
Well, I think that would be very effective, but I think far more effective would be for somebody to say, this is my new car. I need it to get to work. It's not new, it's secondhand, it's third-hand, I paid for it, blah, blah, blah. But I bought it rather than get that stupid health insurance Obama wants me to buy.
So in other words, real world needs, and it seems like whether it's the pajama boy for the Dems or Scott for the Republicans, this notion of identification of other rather than deal with the issue.
Or take Obama's quote, you have to choose between get rid of your credit card, your cell phones and your cable TV, and instead buy health insurance, and have somebody talk about how I need my cell phone for work. Or get rid of cable TV. Is he kidding? I use that every day. I won't use the health insurance in my lifetime, you know, in the next 10 years. Take aim at his vulnerability, which is Obamacare being a tax on young people to subsidize everybody else, and hit young people in their area of vulnerability, their pocketbook. Instead, to talk about vaguely about jobs or about gas prices is ridiculous.
Yeah, and another problem that this might create for the GOP and the RNC and millennials is because millennials don't really buy into this notion that institutions are going to come through for younger generations. We've seen many institutions that a lot of these millennials had a lot of faith in before kind of crumble. We saw this with the banking scandal, the government bailouts, the mortgage crisis. So this generation doesn't have a lot of faith in institutions like the Republican Party. Wouldn't it be better to talk to them on a more one-on-one basis with a candidate, a younger candidate, like Aaron Schork out of Illinois or Tom Cotton out of Oklahoma, and say, hey, this is what we're trying to do for our generation or your generation?
That's true. You're selling a generation that is opposed to institutions on believing in an institution. Just won't work. But above all, this is the first time the millennial generation has been in play politically, not just because some pollster puts them in play, but because they are being asked to subsidize this entire healthcare system. The whole thing is balanced on their backs. What an opportunity to reach them and talk to them about it, and the Republican committee is blowing that.
Well, you've obviously outlined what we instinctively saw as a big problem, but having been a consultant, dealing with a variety of campaigns on both sides of the aisle, what happens with consultants and focus groups to come up with something that is so obviously lame to the world at large?
Yeah. Oh, God knows. There's turf wars, there's manipulation of the research, there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, I could keep you up all day with horror stories about that.
But if you had to pick two primary motivating factors that may have led to the advent of Scott and a Republican pajama boy, if you will, what would they be?
Well, it's old white men like you and me fantasizing about what would work and attracting millennials.
Well, I mean, you know, part of the problem, I think, is that, you know, when you hear this, when you talk to young people, and I talked to a lot of them at CPAC last year about what would really work to court more Republican voters, more of their classmates who don't currently vote Republican. They say just be sincere and honest with the generation. Don't try to talk to them. It's not easy to get somebody to follow your footsteps when you're trying to be like that person you're trying to have follow you here. So just be honest with them. Embrace the Rob Portmans of the world, the John Kasichs of the world who have crossover appeal. Maybe not Chris Christie right now, but it's there, and these kids, young people, younger than 33, still are looking for leadership.
Don't talk to them about us. Talk to them about them. Don't talk about how great we are. Talk about how hard it is for you to afford all the things you need, and on top of it, now you're being forced to pay for Obamacare. Use that issue to win them. Party identification only follows after you go along with the party on issues. It's like the decision to marry only happens after you fall in love. And it has to be driven by issues. And the issue that will connect with them at this point is the burden that's being put on them by Obama.
Well, it'll be interesting to see what Ari Fleischer has to say about this, guys, when we come back, because we're going to get to him on the other side of this upcoming commercial break. We'll ask him, is the GOP's new game plan, has it been a home run so far, and what's he thinking about the upcoming midterm elections? We'll speak with Ari Fleischer, a former advisor to President George W. Bush, his press secretary at one point, on the plan, the growth and opportunity plan started by the GOP exactly 1 year ago. How is it doing today? That when we come right back. And, of course, we want to get you to weigh in and the participation and to participate in the discussion, I'm meaning to say there. We want to hear from you. Reach out to us on social media at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum, on email, connect at newsmaxtv.com, or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/America's TV. Dick Morris, Ari Fleischer, J.D. Hayworth back with me right after this.
Imagine if you had a secret code for making money, a code buried deep within biblical texts.
A code that certain investment titans have quietly exploited to amass billions.
And what if this code could be used by you today to unlock vast amounts of wealth safely and ethically?
Investment expert and former pastor Sean Hyman says there is such a code. He calls it the Biblical Money Code. Sean credits this code for helping him turn his father's $40,000 retirement account into $396,000.
And today, you have the chance to tap into this life-changing biblical money code by visiting moneycode50.com.
That's moneycode, the number 50.com.
At moneycode50.com, you will find a free video that describes how you could use this biblical code in your own life to get out of debt and invest for profits.
That's moneycode50.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Reagan. If you think the worst of Obamacare is behind us, think again. Soon its new rules will affect every business, every insured person, and every Medicare recipient. That's why you need to protect yourself, your family, and your business with the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's easy to read, the fastest way for you to understand this law. The Obamacare Survival Guide gives you the tips, loopholes, and strategies you need to know. If you're insured on Medicare, a business, a medical professional, just about anyone, you need to get the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller, and already more than 500,000 Americans have gotten their copy. Newsmax says it's the best guide to the new law. The Obamacare Survival Guide is at bookstores everywhere, or get Newsmax's $4.95 special offer and save $15 off the cover price. Just go online now or call us today.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Federal and state authorities urge every American family to have an emergency radio. It can save you and your loved ones from disaster. Now, Newsmax has an incredible offer for you. Get our Weather Band emergency radio free. This emergency radio picks up AM, FM, and the NOAA Weather Band. It even works without batteries, essential in an emergency. Call the number below right now and you'll get this emergency radio, plus 2 great publications, including the award-winning Newsmax magazine. Each month, Newsmax brings you the important stories you won't see anywhere else. Plus, you'll get incisive commentary from David Limbaugh, George Will, Michael Reagan, Ben Stein, Dr. Laura, and more. Ben Stein says Newsmax reveals the unafraid, uncomplicated, bare-knuckles truth about today's dangerous world. Mike Reagan says, I guarantee that you'll love Newsmax magazine. This emergency radio offer with Newsmax magazine won't last long. Order online or call the number on your screen right now.
I think that we have to do a better job of making sure that people understand the issues.
1 year ago, that's RNC Chairman Reince Priebus reflecting on what might have gone wrong for the GOP during the 2012 presidential campaign. We welcome you back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. Sticking around with us as well, Dick Morris. Dick, good to have you back with us. We're continuing our discussion right now and the conversation about the GOP's voter outreach project. Here's more from our new friend, Scott Greenberg.
So when it comes to energy policy for this country, I'm for everything. Solar, wind, shale gas, oil, whatever. I'm a Republican because we should have an all-of-the-above energy policy.
All right, Mr. Greenberg there, a new spokesman for the GOP, is talking about energy policy in that ad. He's also doing another commercial that focuses on his paycheck and taxes. You may have noticed the message doesn't seem to be directed at the stereotypical GOP voter, but hey, that's what the Growth and Opportunity Project is all about, right, JD?
John, you're right. That project, fueled by a frank assessment last year of why the GOP came up short in the 2012 presidential election. RNC Chairman Reince Priebus outlining a list of recommendations for the GOP. The RNC has been hard at work ever since its release, restructuring the way it runs campaigns and going out to communities where they've seldom been seen before. And let's come back and talk with Dick Morris about this. Again, in the first segment of the program, Dick, you talked about issues being paramount here. Is the Republican Party losing sight of that, getting involved with the bells and whistles of data and trying to find atypical Republicans to go into spots?
Yeah, they've always been obsessed with mechanics and not with issues, in part because they can control the mechanics of how they spend their money, but they can't control what Republicans in Congress do. Look, it's evident that the single biggest thing the Republican Party would have to do to break the Democratic demographic lock is immigration reform. Until you remove the burr that's under the saddle that's irritating everybody, the 11 or 12 million people that might be deported, you're not going to make much progress in the Latino community. But once you get rid of that burr, once you stop the threat of deportation, even if you do not provide a path to citizenship, you can get rid of that irritant and the underlying issues of jobs and health care, which are moving strongly for the Republicans, can deliver those votes.
Dick, right there, I want to talk to you a little bit more, because obviously I'm on the other side of the issue, and it seems that what you're saying about Latinos embraces the myth of the monolith, that everyone with a Hispanic last name is for open borders and amnesty. It's not the case. If you ask the Republican Party to abandon law and order and demographically open the door...
Let me not fall into the chasm of that slogan.
Okay, all right.
Open borders
Clarify.
and amnesty. Nobody is for open borders. And in fact, the administration's recent decision not to permit border security guards to use their weapons, and Obama's recent announcement that he's going to peel back the deportations, gives us zero faith in the administration's willingness to close the border. Everybody agrees among the Republicans and Latinos that closing the border is important. In terms of amnesty, the issue, as far as I'm concerned, is will you permit the people who are here to stay here and work here without giving them the right to vote here, without giving them citizenship?
And that's something that's going to have to be defined, and that's a topic for a whole other day that we want to have, and we'll have you back to discuss that. But real quickly, we want to go ahead and get to Ari Fleischer, who's now joining us on the phone. He was one of the authors of the Growth and Opportunity Project. Mr. Fleischer, it's great to have you with us.
Great to be with you.
So, Ari, it's J.D., and I remember the days when you were press secretary for the Ways and Means Committee. Ari, last year, the report about opportunity and outreach, 1 year has passed. A partisan press called it a GOP autopsy. Aside from that catcall, which I guess is predictable in the D.C. press, what parts of this project for growth and opportunity have been successful in your mind?
All right. Well, first, JD, it's great to be on with you again. You and I go back, gosh, it's 20 years, so always wonderful to say hello to you.
Thank you.
But what's been most successful are the mechanical pieces, the things that a party is supposed to implement. Things such as getting its technology shop in order, catching up and getting ahead of the Democrats where they leapfrogged us in data and technology, behind-the-scenes things. Things like changing the primary calendar so we have a convention that takes place earlier in the year so our candidate doesn't run out of money and get beat up by the Democrats when they have a convention in August. We need to move it up to June or to July. All those mechanical pieces are being done, plus, very importantly, outreach. The party party is making a determined effort to grow the Republican vote in places where we used to get shellacked. And if we keep getting shellacked in minority communities, we'll never win the White House again. So the party is doing a very good job, in my opinion, about getting troops on the ground in the black community, Hispanic community, Asian community, places where we need to make our case, argue our merits, and win more votes.
Ari, we appreciate you coming on with us. We're going to have to stop it right there. A little bit of problem with telephone reception. But Dick, we heard loudly and clearly from Ari the mechanics, getting the House in order. And while that is important, it's not the big thing preparing for the midterms.
Yeah, the fundamental problem that the Republicans have with outreach is the message. Their message on women is blocked by abortion. Their message on to Latinos is blocked by immigration reform. Now, you can overcome those without running afoul of many of your convictions. You can deal with immigration reform without giving them the right to vote. You can deal with abortion by a real focus on choice in education, teacher quality, breaking the teachers' union, like Scott Walker has done in Wisconsin. But I think the RNC effort has been, I gather, long on mechanics, although I don't know, but certainly short on message. What's generally happening, though, is that in off-year elections, minorities don't turn out as heavily as they do in on-year elections. And this election will probably be a wave election, mainly because the increased black and Latino vote probably won't happen in this election. Now, will it ever happen if a black man is not at the head of the ticket? We don't know the answer to that.
And that seems to be highlighted, but we heard from the director, the president of La Raza, who recently accused the president of being, quote unquote, the deporter in chief. And JD, you brought up that the numbers, the statistics that are being used to quantify the deportations might be dubious, but still, Dick, that kind of message directed at the president for his deportation stance, that might foreshadow just how abysmal the outreach effort for the Democrats could be, getting those folks to the polls this election cycle.
Well, I think Obama is going to absolutely surrender on that. I think Obama will basically stop deporting anybody. He's ordered a review of deportation procedures to make them more humane.
But that speaks to the sentiment of the community, the way they feel about the president, and doesn't really give us much indication that they're going to come out in force like they did in 2012 and 2008.
I think that's the key point. I think that it may be a bridge too far to get them to love Republicans, but it certainly is possible to get them to hate Democrats.
Well, we know that is the effort right now, but it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, can you imagine doomsday scenario? Karl Rove last night would not predict that the GOP was going to win the Senate definitively. We can understand why he might be a little reluctant to do so, but what would happen if they do not win the Senate back? It would make 2012, the day after 2012, look like Christmas morning.
It'll give us plenty to talk about,
true.
but a lot going into the midterms, John. Dick, as always, we appreciate your wisdom and counsel. Keep it on the issues the Republicans should be okay. And we'd like you to address those issues. Here's how you do it via social media. You can tweet us at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum. Also, you can find us at Facebook.com and your ever popular email. Our address, connect@newsmaxtv.com. There is more to come on America's Forum.
What you don't know about Pope Francis will shock you. Bestseller, Francis, A Pope for Our Time, tells the real story. Newsmax says Francis, A Pope for Our Time, rips off the shroud of mystery about this man. Now Newsmax has a special offer for Francis, A Pope for Our Time. Get it for just $9.95 and save $12 off the cover price. Plus, we'll send you a free 1-year subscription to Newsmax magazine. That's a $40 value for free. Order now at popesagenda.com.
3 a.m. and you're up again for the third time. It's not just affecting your sleep, it's interrupting your daily life. Frequent trips to the bathroom due to an aging prostate is a common concern, but you can now do something about it with Prostate Revive. Doctor-formulated Prostate Revive is an all-natural dietary supplement packed with 15 powerful ingredients, focused on improving prostate health by targeting the two main sources of prostate concerns, rogue testosterone and inflammation. And now, in this limited time offer, you can try Prostate Revive absolutely absolutely free. That's a free bottle, a 30-day supply of Prostate Revive, risk-free. Plus, if you call right now, you'll also receive our free report, A Doctor's Guide to a Healthy Prostate. Call now for details on getting your free bottle, plus our doctor's report. Call 1-800-659-REVIVE. That's 1-800-659-REVIVE. Don't be a victim of an aging prostate. Start getting the sleep you need and get your life back with Prostate Revive. Claim your risk-free bottle now at 1-800-659-REVIVE.
Meet John and Nancy. Like many people, John and Nancy have spent their whole lives working hard, saving their money and investing wisely, knowing that it would pay off in the end. But the reality is, today's world is not the same as it was. John and Nancy's stocks have taken them on a serious roller coaster ride, and it's all but destroyed their retirement funds. Their house is not even close to being worth what they paid, and to boot, their middle-class paychecks no longer cover their costs. All that hard work and smart investing has gotten them nowhere. In fact, they are no longer thinking about when they will retire, they're wondering if they'll retire. Then one day, John and Nancy heard about a man named Tom Hutchison, a veteran of Wall Street for over 2 decades. Tom noticed that the wealthy invested differently than normal people, and their methods seemed to be a secret they didn't want to share. So Tom left his job, compiled the strategies, and published them in the controversial book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns. John and Nancy immediately picked up a copy, began investing, and never looked back. Thanks to Powerful Secrets, John and Nancy now have investments that pay up to 20% a year. They learned about unique tax-advantaged investments, and their favorite chapter revealed a strategy that anyone can use to turn $50,000 into $1 million. Now, John and Nancy have control of their financial future in this new reality, and they have peace of mind about their investments that they never had before. Best of all, they are back on track to a secure retirement. To get your free copy of the book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns, simply visit www.myfinancialage.org.
You are back with us on America's Forum. We're glad to have you back. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. Thanks for sticking around. Let's give a recap of the top stories making news today around the world. A developing story right now coming exclusively from Newsmax partner Lignet.com. According to a source at Boeing, the missing Malaysia Flight 370 may be in Pakistan. Still, some doubt this theory is possible. We'll have much more on this, plus the latest on the CIA and Senate investigation with Lignet senior analyst Fred Fleitz. And remember that hit TV show Lost? Well, some people have been making a comparison between the fictional program and the reality of the Malaysian jet airliner, including a reporter who asked one of the show's former stars to weigh in.
It's a tragedy, and it's, ours was a TV show, so it's absolutely nothing at all like that, and my heart goes out to those people. But I would like to know what happened, and I think, well, I hope we do know by now soon.
All kinds of questions get asked in those press junkets. Moving on now, Vice President Joe Biden is in Poland. His mission in Warsaw is to remind U.S. and NATO allies that Putin's aggression will not be tolerated. But with the Russian president and his cohorts laughing off the most recent round of sanctions, it's not clear what else the U.S. can do to ease tensions. Biden also discussed the situation with other Eastern European leaders. And President Obama is headed there later this week. JD, many foreign policy experts are saying it's time. We heard Dick Morris talk about this. It's time to put those missiles in Poland, as we promised to do back a few years ago, before the president and the Secretary of State, then Hillary Clinton, hit the reset button with Russia.
John, from behind a talk radio microphone, I made this point, and not trying to be cheeky, but with all due respect, if Mr. Obama and his administration treated the Russians like they treat Republicans in domestic political squabbles, I think things would be going much better in terms of foreign policy. And as some predicted, the Obama administration giving up control of the internet it creates a vacuum, and Russia and China might walk right in, John.
That's right, JD. You pointed me to this story. Reuters, one of the many sources talking about it right now. We're quoting an article here. Many Middle Eastern countries, Russia, China, and others, I believe, are going to take an increasingly aggressive stand to try and control the internet, Ross told a news briefing. Mr. Ross being Alex Ross, who is a senior official within the State Department. An interesting issue there. Now, JD, it's one of the problems here, we talked about what it would mean, but the issue here is you think about the Arab Spring, the results still in question at this point, but the people there had the freedom of the internet to spread their message. Now, what would happen here if Russia or one of the Middle Eastern countries like Iran or Egypt in the case took control of the internet? They could create an intranet and allow things from outside the country not to get in, be a huge, here in this country would be a violation of the First Amendment, and they don't have that in those countries, but it could definitely thwart the free expression of information.
And while you will get some high-tech apologists for our current president, the fact is that there is no greater example of the beneficence of the American people, specifically our national security apparatus. Remember, the internet was not invented by Al Gore. It was invented by Defense Department researchers, and we have shared it with the entire world. And John, as you point out, if the internet becomes the intranet, and we can take a look at certain search engines, certain business concerns from the United States, especially in the so-called People's Republic of China, the Chinese government clamping down on the ability of people to get their messages. And of course, we know about the command and control of the one-time KGB apparatchik, now back in charge in Russia, in Mr. Putin. And believe me, the fundamental flaw in ceding control of the internet over to a, quote, international body is the fact that if it is the UN with professional malcontents masquerading as diplomats, they will work in league with the Russians and the Chinese, and the third world will do its absolute best to take away this American asset from which the world has benefited. And obviously, yes, it has given us great technological strides and been such an economic engine as well as vital to national security.
You think about the internet, you think about things like Velcro and Tang that came from the space program, these unintended benefits we saw from government spending here harkens back to maybe a better day when we got more return on our investment from our tax dollars. Moving on now, we want to talk about something that's not really political, something else happening at the White House today, a great story. A man named Melvin Morris, a retired Army sergeant who lives in Florida. Well, he is one of 3 living vets who are going to receive the Medal of Honor at the White House at 3:40 this afternoon. 21 others will receive the award posthumously. The vets awarded medals today all fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And JD, you actually played a small role in this as a member of Congress back in 2002. You voted for a review of war records for minorities, some that may have been slighted for these very important awards because of racial reasons a long time ago. So it's a great story, and always good to see these heroes getting their due respect.
Well, the whole notion of the Medal of Honor, it is tough to earn that citation in the first place. And the fact is, any number of these cases merit review. And when I was representing a congressional district in Arizona, where 1 out of every 4 of my constituents was Native American or American Indian, if you prefer, no other racial/ethnic group volunteers for military service the way that Native Americans do. And time after time, I would hear from veterans from my district saying, you know, people need to recognize the contributions of all Americans, and so that reinforced this. The other thing during my time on the Veterans Affairs Committee, on that simply but wonderfully named subcommittee benefits, which I chaired, was updating the GI Bill for the 21st century so the veterans coming home from Iraq and Afghanistan could avail themselves of educational opportunities, and obviously that's an ongoing battle. But to the ceremony this afternoon, to see these people who stood for America, stood in the breach, faced incredible danger, and performed heroically, that's a message that knows no political party. And after all, think of it this way. When our men and women volunteer, the insignia they wear does not talk about Democrats or Republicans. Instead, it talks about the United States of America. That's a lesson all of us need to learn, and it's a lesson that will be reinforced today at the White House.
It's an important lesson to learn, and our hats are off to those brave men and women who serve for us on the front lines and make sure we can live a free and healthy life.
Absolutely.
All right, we come right back after the break. When the Berlin Wall came down, it signaled the end of the Cold War between the United States and Russia. But you might be surprised about how many Americans believe that we are on the verge of another Cold War, possibly the most dangerous one we've seen in a long time. The chill between relations between the U.S. and Russia. We come back after this.
Newsmax magazine is proud to present a unique tribute to our 40th president, Ronald Reagan. It is a very special documentary in our commemorative issue of Newsmax magazine, celebrating the centennial of President Reagan's birth. First, here's a video clip from the award-winning documentary, Rendezvous with Destiny.
We're in the midst of a springtime of hope for America. You ain't seen nothing yet. Impulses of an evil empire. Tear down this wall. I believe that together we can keep this rendezvous with destiny.
In the next several minutes, you will learn things about President Ronald Reagan that you've never seen, heard, or read before. Welcome to today's special Newsmax event celebrating the life and legacy of President Reagan. During this historic presentation, we will commemorate President Reagan's storied life. We'll revisit his 2 terms in office and recollect his proudest achievements and greatest challenges. Ronald Reagan's life reads like a fairy tale of success stories. He was an accomplished athlete, an honored veteran, a famous actor, the governor of California, and of course, our nation's 40th president.
He called himself a citizen politician and only entered politics when he warned government was gaining too much power. By then he was age 54. With a successful career behind him. Twice elected President of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan was a contradiction to some. Once a Democrat, then a Republican. A champion of smaller government whose own government grew. A fiscal conservative who failed to balance the budget. His critics mistook his affability for weakness, but behind the smile and the charm existed an extraordinary leader with unique skills and bold and revolutionary ideas.
We only had time to share just a few of the top defining moments in Ronald Reagan's presidency, but you'll get to see them all in Rendezvous with Destiny. By the way, the president's close relationship with the Pope is especially fascinating. You'll also learn how dealing with an alcoholic father helped shape Reagan's ability to negotiate. And if you ever wondered what the leader of the free world likes to get for the holidays, well, you'll find that out as well. So let's review today in this free offer. We are sending you a copy of Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny, and the collector's limited edition of our issue commemorating the 100th anniversary of President Reagan's birth.
Right now, when you subscribe to Newsmax magazine, you can own both the DVD and receive the special Reagan 100th birthday commemorative edition. That's $25 in bonus gifts when you subscribe. Go to newsmax.com/Reagan13 to subscribe today. Newsmax.com/Reagan13. Join the millions who read Newsmax magazine every month.
What can that be?
52-year-old male complaining of chest pains.
Clear.
If you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival.
Hi, my name is Dr. Crandall. As a cardiologist, I've dedicated the last 30 years to helping my patients win the fight against heart disease. That's why I wrote the Simple Heart Cure, to show you how easy it is to identify early warning signs, make simple heart-healthy changes, and reverse heart disease in just 90 days. You'll discover how to reduce your risk of heart attack by 61%. Lower your bad cholesterol, unclog your arteries naturally, safely lower your blood pressure, and so much more. This easy-to-read book shows you how to make simple changes to protect your heart.
Dr. Crandall's best-selling book is available at bookstores everywhere. Or go online to heartcure211.com and get your copy for just $4.95.
Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., new polling data suggests that Americans now see Russia as a threat, especially as the situation in the Ukraine continues to deteriorate. Today, Russian officials officially annexed Crimea. Joining us right now to discuss the way Americans feel towards Russians is Morgan Thompson, Newsmax correspondent. Morgan, great to have you here with us on the set.
Thank you, John. It's always good to be back. More Americans consider Russia a serious threat today than they have since the Cold War, according to a CNN ORC poll taken March 7th through 9th. Poll results say 70% of Americans see Russia as a threat to the U.S. And of that percentage, 69% believe Russia to be a moderate or serious threat. Significantly, the number of Americans who see Russia as a serious threat has tripled since April of 2012. This holds true across party lines. The percentage of change in Americans' feelings about the potential threat from Russia from 2012 through 2014 is nearly identical among Republicans, Democrats, and independents. Not since 1985 have we seen the American public so concerned about the threat Russia poses to our safety. But despite this, few Americans have any interest in getting militarily involved in the current crisis in the Ukraine.
Morgan, you mentioned 1985, when Russia was still the dominant portion of the Soviet Union.
Yes.
Really the last time Americans were so concerned about the whole balance of power in terms of the Cold War.
Correct.
If we could differentiate and we go back in time, when was the last time we had this specific concern about Russia instead of the collective Soviet Union?
Well, the last time you really saw an American concern about Russia was in 1999. But I think this current poll is very significant because 70% of Americans perceive Russia as a threat. Now, you've got to remember, the numbers we were discussing, 76% was that number in 1985, and that was at the height of the Cold War. So I think this is really significant.
Is Russia the country that most Americans are concerned about? I mean, what about Iran or North Korea or a cavalcade of potential adversaries on the world stage?
Oh, that's all we need. But you know, that's a great question. And actually, the current polls show that all three of those countries are at about the same level of threat. But you know, this is concerning. I mean, we have three very dangerous enemies out there right now, and that's a big concern to our public safety.
Morgan, obviously, we're here in America. We're concerned with American attitudes,
Yes.
but in your research for this story, what's going on with our European allies? Are Europeans so dependent on Russia's natural gas? Does that shape their attitudes? What are we hearing from the EU countries?
Well, as concerned as Americans are, Europeans are much more concerned, and rightly so. Most European countries are highly dependent on Russia for their natural gas, and some are 100% dependent on Russia for natural gas.
Now, it's interesting to watch the rhetoric change. And this past Sunday, one of the leading anchors on state-controlled Russian television said, and I believe the translation went something like this: Russia is the only nation which can reduce the United States to a heap of radioactive ash. Yesterday, we had my former colleague Pete Hoekstra, the one-time head of the House Intelligence Committee, with us. He said, well, that's just Cold War rhetoric. How is this playing into the concern about Russia?
Well, I wish it were true, because that's the problem as far as it being Cold War rhetoric. We actually can. I mean, that is why Russia is such a threat, because it's a possibility, and that's terrifying.
Well, and you take a look at the actions of this administration, and we spoke earlier about the so-called reset and the notion of taking missiles out of Poland. President Obama believing those actions would lead to, as they called it, a reset. Well, apparently with Mr. Putin, it's just turned into a reload and a chance for the Russians to reassess, rebuild, and dare we say reconquer some areas in Crimea and elsewhere in the Ukraine.
Well, and you know, the important thing to notice about Putin is we can't trust anything he says. I mean, look at what's been going on about Crimea. Oh, we're not there, we're not there. We can't trust anything that this man says, and clearly he wants to play dirty politics. So if there wasn't enough to be concerned about, that's a big part of it as well.
And guys, if I could jump in real quick here, because I just saw an update coming from the AP talking about President Obama. We know he's going over to Europe later this week. He also is talking now about wanting to get the other 7 countries in the G8, which now includes Russia, getting them together in the Netherlands next week, and going ahead and talking about how to discuss whether or not Moscow should be allowed to continue to be to participate in this important summit of the largest economies in the world right now.
And when you hear that, you see, that hands the Russians what they want. They shouldn't be invited to this summit because you're now awarding. So you kicked us in the teeth. Oh, okay, come on and sit down with us again. I guess this is what the president means, leading from behind, because he wants to get the group together and even include the Russians. I got to tell you, from my vantage point, that's rewarding the Russians for this aggression.
Well, you know, at the risk of legitimizing their current politics and policies, which we know we don't stand behind, you know, exactly what you just said, we could really be reduced to rubble. So if discourse and talk is the first step, I mean, let's start there before we, you know, pull out the big guns.
Well, Churchill said jaw is preferable to war.
I agree.
But it's worth noting that Mr. Churchill's predecessor as the prime minister embraced a policy of appeasement. That's the legacy of Neville Chamberlain, and already The Economist has called our current president, this is interesting, from a European journal, they've called him, quote, the appeaser-in-chief. It's hard to understand how suddenly now including the Russians here and incentivizing this bad behavior is going to do anything but lead to more Russian aggression.
Well, again, you know, talk is cheap, but is it? If it's the first step, you know, I think, like you said, they kicked us in the teeth. It's kicking them in the teeth and saying, no, we don't want to play with you. You can't come to our summit. I don't know how that's going to help. It's just going to escalate.
I know there is a lot of concern right now about the situation, the way the president looks, but the one way we can look at this right now is that if capitalism really did win the Cold War over communism, the one thing that could prevent the nuclear ash situation is the economic ties between Russia, Europe, and the United States here. Clearly, that's why things have not progressed further. We don't know if that's going to be the case or not, but that's the difference between now and the Cold War, JD. There's much more interplay between Russia, which has, you know, we don't want to call it a capitalistic economy, but they do have an open, somewhat economy, which they did not have under communism.
Well, we do have a situation where energy prices do figure in, and you may recall Dick Morris was here saying, let's get on track with our own liquefied natural gas to help out in the Ukraine. Always good to hear from you, Morgan.
Thanks
so
much.
much.
Good to be here,
Good
Morgan.
to see you as well.
Good to see you. All right, after the break, we want to hear from you. What do you think about today's top stories? We want to get to your comments coming up right after this break. Don't go away.
Hello, I'm back this week with this very important question. Is your doctor taking your blood pressure correctly? You may assume so, but a new study shows you may be wrong. According to this new research, doctors often cut corners when taking blood pressure and record readings that may be much too high. This is important information. First, if your blood pressure reading is wrong, you could be misdiagnosed with high blood pressure and put on powerful drugs for the rest of your life. You could also be denied health insurance, and your job may even be put in jeopardy. This is important information, so pay close attention. Number one, is your doctor using the right size blood pressure cuff? Cuffs come in two different sizes, average and large, but too often only the average size cuff is even used, even on the person with a larger forearm. If the cuff is too tight, the reading will be too high. Number two, is your blood pressure taken in both of your arms? Doctors are taught that this is not mandatory, but it should be. Even a small difference between the two pressure readings can mean you are at great risk of suffering from a stroke or even dying of heart disease. And number three, is your blood pressure taken when you are seated on the examining table with your legs dangling in the air? If so, your reading may be 10 points too high. You should be seated in the chair with your feet on the floor and your legs apart and relaxed. Don't cross your legs at either the knees or the ankles. Remember, if your doctor doesn't take your blood pressure the correct way, you could be putting your health at risk. Many of you already have my book, The Simple Heart Cure. So if you do, you can read all about high blood pressure in Chapter 8. That's my health tip for this week. I'll see you next week with another important Heart Health Minute.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with this special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger.
Tear down this wall.
Not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Attention seniors and baby boomers. A new website has been created just for you. MyBenefits811.com. At MyBenefits811.com, we reveal a weird trick that could help you add $152,000 to your Social Security payouts. For example, did you know how you file for Social Security can dramatically change the amount of money you collect? One simple step could add up to $1,000 to your monthly payouts. And other strategies we found reveal 33 ways for big savings on your health care. At MyBenefits811.com, you will also discover how you could save up to 50% on your groceries, along with 49 other ways to save as much as $50,000 starting today. Newsmax says MyBenefits811.com is a critical resource for anyone over the age of 50. So go to MyBenefits811.com now to find out how you could add extra money to your Social Security checks. That's MyBenefits811.com, MyBenefits811.com.
And we welcome you back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., let's get to some of the comments that our viewers were nice enough to write in for us today.
People have some comments on American foreign policy. John, let's begin with Wes I. It will take several years after Democrats are replaced before the U.S. can restore foreign credibility, if at all.
Well, we'll see when that's going to happen. Maybe it's going to be this election cycle, maybe the next, or maybe the next after that. We'll see. Our beloved president, this one coming from James C. Our beloved president has revealed to the world that he's totally out of place when it comes to dealing with delicate foreign affairs.
And then Morgan R., who really opens up the rhetorical fireworks on the president. Morgan R. writes, Obama, once again, the wimp on the playing field. I guess none of his temper tantrums of late have worked. I can only imagine what the rest of Europe is saying to each other. And this is the paradox. And again, it's not to score partisan points, but just realistically. As I've said time and again, in terms of foreign policy, attitudinally, if President Obama would treat the Russians and other foreign powers the way he treats his domestic political adversaries in the Republican Party, I have no doubt that we would have a strong foreign policy. And yet, for whatever reason, there seems to be this indulgence, this rationalization of why Mr. Putin and others of his ilk take the actions they do. And John, you were talking about next week at The Hague and what may transpire there. Now, I know you've taken a look at the AP Dispatch, and there's some more details coming in on this.
Yes, apparently next week in The Hague, in the Netherlands, there's going to be a meeting of countries that are going to talk about nuclear weapons. Russia is going to be one of 53 countries that were already scheduled to attend, but the president wants to use this opportunity to get the other 6 countries, the United States and the 6 countries aside from Russia that make up the G8, to get together and talk about Russia's role and Moscow's role in the G8 summit. That's a meeting that takes place every year of the 8 largest economies in the world. They talk about global economic issues. This year, it's scheduled to take place in Sochi. There have been some folks who have called for an immediate withdrawal from the United States from that meeting. They have done that. But what this means for Russia now, it'll be a real test to see where the other European countries stand on Russia. We know they have more interplay economically with them.
So really, just to drill down on the story, the president's not saying, hey, Russians, come along. He's apparently asking for a caucus of the G7 minus Russia, which would make a lot of sense. And I would commend him for that. After all, that is the least he can do. And John, we were talking before the break about the economic engine at work here in the United States and in the European Union. The Russians have enjoyed a great deal of success in terms of energy and supplying energy to all of Europe, including the Ukraine. If you can hit the Russians where it hurts in the pocketbook, that can make a real difference.
It certainly can. We have much more ahead here on America's Forum. The second hour of this program will roll on right after this commercial break. Of course, you can always reach us on social media at Newsmax TV. Connect at newsmaxtv.com is our email. You can find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Newsmax TV. America's Forum is the hashtag on Twitter. We're coming right back after this.
More than 76 million Americans are currently living with high blood pressure, but only about half of them have their blood pressure under control. Controlling blood pressure is mandatory because if it's not controlled, you're at great risk for such deadly conditions as heart attack, stroke, congestive heart failure, and kidney disease. Most doctors consider uncontrolled hypertension as an excuse to prescribe more medication. But there can be some hidden reasons why your blood pressure is persistently too high. To find out, here are the important questions you must ask your doctor. First, ask your doctor if there could be an underlying reason why your blood pressure is too high. The vast majority of people have essential high blood pressure, which means that it occurs for no identifiable cause. But some people have secondary high blood pressure, which means there is another condition involved, and once it is treated, their high blood pressure disappears. Here are the major causes of secondary high blood pressure: kidney problems or disorders, adrenal gland tumors, certain defects in blood vessels you're born with, congenital, illegal drugs such as cocaine and amphetamines. Second, ask your doctor if any medications you are on could be causing your blood pressure to rise. Certain medications, such as birth control pills, cold remedies, decongestants, over-the-counter pain relievers, and some prescription drugs can cause or contribute to high blood pressure. This is a possibility when you consider that nearly half of all Americans over the age of 55 are on at least one prescription drug. Many take multiple prescription drugs, and almost everyone uses over-the-counter remedies. Since most of you already have my book, The Simple Heart Cure, I want you to go to chapter 12, which is all about high blood pressure. Now here's what I want you to do. Go to your medicine cabinet and make a list of the drugs that you take. Include the over-the-counter ones as well. Check their labels or informational brochures. Do any of them list hypertension or high blood pressure as a side effect? If so, bring them to the attention of your doctor. They could be contributing to your high blood pressure. That's my health tip for this week, but I'll see you next week with another very important Heart Health Minute.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with his special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Meet Jim. Like many of us, Jim enjoys a busy life. Between work, family, and friends, his days zip along. And Jim has the energy to tackle almost anything. But lately, Jim's get up and go has literally taken on a new meaning. Jim's always put focus on a full night's sleep. But it seems like these days, he's up and down to go to the bathroom so many times he can barely wake up in the morning. His prostate concerns have him sad, tired, and worried. Activities that were once enjoyable now seem like a chore for Jim. His golf game is at the mercy of his bathroom schedule. Family outings are planned around it too. Jim even has difficulty going to the bathroom. He's tried so many prostate remedies it can't keep him straight, and nothing ever seems to help. Then Jim found out about Prostate Revive, the all-natural dietary supplement specifically formulated for men, targeted towards improving and sustaining normal prostate function. Prostate Revive includes 15 super ingredients never combined before, including saw palmetto extract, beta-cytosterol, pomegranate fruit extract, selenium, and other high-quality nutrients. These targeted and all-natural ingredients promote healthy urinary flow and optimal prostate health. And the best part is, Prostate Revive was developed by a renowned medical doctor. Dr. David Brownstein personally formulated Prostate Revive with one goal in mind: to promote a healthy prostate gland. Thanks to Prostate Revive, Jim's got his life back. He gets a full night's sleep every night, and his friends and his wife can't believe he's the same guy. He has his old energy back, and no one has to wait for him. He doesn't even think about his prostate concerns anymore. Visit MedicSelect.com to take back your nights and improve your quality of life with Prostate Revive.
Learn about our risk-free trial offer at prostaterevive.com/Jim.
This hour, a big story Newsmax first warned you about 4 years ago. Well, now it's happening. The Obama administration moving ahead with plans to cede control of the internet. And now, see which countries say they're ready to step in. Foreign policy expert Christian Whiten answers that. First up in the show.
Plus, the crisis in the Ukraine. President Vladimir Putin officially blessed the Russian annexation of Crimea today. So what's next? And will visits to Eastern Europe by the president and vice president make any difference? We'll have the Hoover Institute's Paul Gregory with us later in our program.
And midterm storm clouds are gathering over Democrats. The realities of Obamacare and the Medicare cuts its force taking root in a recent special congressional election. Coming up, Ralph Reed of the Faith and Freedom Coalition joins us here on America's Forum to talk about the midterms, Republican momentum, and the growing concern about Christian prosecution, or persecution, I should say, abroad. America's Forum continues right now.
Hour 2 of America's Forum for this Tuesday. Welcome back. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
J.D., it's great to be with you. Great to be with everyone at home. A lot to get to today. Let's talk about our top story this hour right now. The Obama administration ready to hand over control of the internet to a global oversight body. The move would end the U.S. government's oversight over things like buying and selling domain names, things like .com and .net. The transition begins next year when a Commerce Department contract expires with a nonprofit organization. The Obama administration and officials say an international authority must be created, not one led by the American government, not one everybody welcomes. That's an announcement not everyone welcomed in the news.
You know, that sounds very plausible, but I mean, why don't we go ahead and give away the recipe for Oreos? I mean, there ought to be something about the fact that the United States, primarily its military, developed, you know, the whole concept of the internet. And what I fear is that when it goes into this sort of global mishmash, who really then has any ability to control? Who has any ability to monitor?
Like the governor, I also enjoy Oreos, but Huckabee also said that the shocking abuse of power by the NSA is a cause for concern. But the answer, he says, is not to give the internet away to an undefined governing body. So what does the president's internet surrender mean for us here in the United States?
Joining us now to talk about it, Christian Whiten, who is Skyping in. Christian Whiten, a foreign policy expert, written extensively on the balance of power and what is next. Christian, we welcome you to America's Forum.
Great to be here, J.D. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Now, Christian, over the weekend, I read some of your writings, and you offered an analogy to giving away the Panama Canal in the mid-1970s. Upon further reflection, is that the right historical analogy, or does this ceding of the internet bespeak of something far more dangerous?
You know, I think it is actually more dangerous. There's some similarities. The Carter-Torrijos Treaty, which gave away the Panama Canal, was sort of the same type of you know, global approach where, you know, I cynically say it's making the world safe for cocktail parties. It's creating some sort of undefined goodwill in the international community, whatever that was, in return for giving away something very significant. And this is, you know, this is a big deal. This is the ability not just to name domains, which itself is a big deal, but potentially the ability to disable the entire internet at a time of crisis.
Now, Christian, as we unpack this, we are seeing reports, for example, in today's National Journal, the headline talks about Russia and China moving in. If the United States steps away and creates a vacuum, despite all the talk about an international entity taking over, in terms of realpolitik, are we basically looking at the Russians and the Chinese muscling in to change the internet to their own national security advantages?
I think so, because I think this eventually ends up at the UN if we free it from that minimal oversight that the Commerce Department has. You know, an international organization, if they're going to be very tempted to give up the oversight that's provided by the IRS, others that you have if you're a U.S. nonprofit. I'll bet this ends up in Geneva. The CEO, a very international guy himself, has already said he wants to open an office in Geneva, which means that you are in a venue where the U.S. consistently loses and where China, Saudi Arabia, Russia, others do very well.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned Geneva because, Christian, for so many years, the Swiss have enjoyed this reputation of being positively neutral. But that neutrality brings about the vacuum that allows the Russians, the Chinese, and other international bad actors to walk right in, move right in, and perpetrate their own designs in terms of geopolitics on this wonderful instrument?
That's right. If you look at, for example, the UN Human Rights Council, which meets in Geneva, a UN body, just look at the name. It's supposed to be about human rights. Does this organization condemn China, condemn Russia, condemn Iran, for example? No, it's actually just as apt to look into the conduct of Israel, the United States, and other free nations. So, these guys are relentless. They work at this nonstop. They are strong, and generally the people we send to these organizations are a little bit on the diffident side. And so, is there going to be a tax on Israeli companies trying to register domain names because this organization doesn't like them? Is there going to be a tax on U.S. companies? And also, does that tax free the UN from the limited control that we have by being the one who writes the paychecks for them?
Now, Christian, you spoke about taxes to commercial entities, but what about to every American? Is it conceivable that the UN would try to levy an international internet tax on the citizens of the world, including the citizens of the United States?
Yeah, it would be inevitable, I think, if we let this one go, because the UN has wanted this for a long time. They tried to get a tax on international currency transactions. They tried to get the Law of the Sea Treaty, which, if ratified by the U.S. Senate, would give the UN the ability to tax some mining offshore in the U.S. So they'd love to be free of that very limited control that reliance on member state contributions provides. And so, yeah, I think it's a no-brainer that they're going to go after this. And so everything could be taxed, including, for example, this interaction we're having right now. That's going over the internet. It's not just the ability to log on to, say, Amazon and actually find your way to Amazon, which is one of the critical functions that ICON, the organization, does. It's a whole gamut of communications and commerce.
Now, how would that tax work? This is a question, I guess, for both of you guys, as a former member of the Ways and Means Committee, and for you, Christian, as well. How would the UN have the ability to levy a tax on people living here in the United States with the Constitution granting that authority to the Congress?
I think, they would just say might makes right. We control the internet registrations. And so, if you want a website for your church or your muffler shop or whatever, then you better pony up. And we see you're registering from the United States. So that costs extra because, pay your fair share. And, you have a program that involves travel to Israel or fellowship with Israel. And guess what? That costs extra, too, because we don't like that whole Zionism thing. I'm being a little cynical here, but that's the beginning. And then, of course, for the masses of information that relies on TCP/IP, on the whole addressing system of the internet that ICON coordinates, that they could levy taxes on businesses. But it's not just Amazon, even the small guys, too.
Yeah, we're moving to this model now, Christian, where more and more Americans are getting the bulk of their information from the internet, not just the stuff they read online on sites like Newsmax.com, but also the TV they watch and things like that. Why have we not heard more from companies like Comcast and Time Warner, who have a huge stake in this change about this huge shift, this tectonic shift, and what it could mean for our internet? Why haven't we heard from these companies yet?
Well, again, me being cynical, I think they sort of buy the whole global-only thing. They, go to Davos and places like that and think that this, can be managed. Think that that global internet community that's going to host this will act beneficially. And they, through their business models, haven't really gotten a glimpse of the horrors of the UN system, the way people who work on human rights and democracy and U.S. national security do. So I think they're going to be in for a big surprise. Also, but frankly, it's a problem, and this is a bipartisan problem in Washington, with a general inattention to foreign policy issues. We follow the shiny object in this last couple of weeks. It's been Crimea, and that's a very important thing. But there's been inattention to the tools of statecraft that exist between diplomacy and war that really do matter for our national security.
To that point, Christian, what do conservatives and concerned Americans do to stop this?
I think there is time for Congress to stop this. What they've said is they're just not going to renew a contract that the Commerce Department puts out. We have until the middle of 2015. I think putting a provision in this year's budget, the budget levels are already set, but still there's going to have to be a continuing resolution or some legislation at the end of the year, even though there's an election coming, and really just preventing this, either mandating that Commerce reissue this contract they have, or to my mind, better yet, putting it under a new federally funded research and development corporation that's sort of like a federal 501c3 type thing.
Well, those elections, Christian, are right around the corner, and if we know the GOP gets control of the Senate, this could change in a major way. Thanks so much for being with us, Christian White, and always a pleasure to speak with you.
Christian coming us today from Los Angeles. He makes a point, Skyping in. Imagine an international agency levying taxes or basically charging like a long-distance phone call every time you utilize the internet. It can have a profound change and a real threat to our national security and economic well-being.
It certainly can. We want to hear from you. What do you think about this? You can reach us on social media at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum, or email us, connect@newsmaxtv.com, or find us on Facebook, facebook.com/Newsmax TV.
Imagine if you had a secret code for making money, a code buried deep within biblical texts.
A code that certain investment titans have quietly exploited to amass billions.
And what if this code could be used by you today to unlock vast amounts of wealth safely and ethically?
Investment expert and former pastor Sean Hyman says there is such a code. He calls it the Biblical Money Code. Sean credits this code for helping him turn his father's $40,000 retirement account into $396,000.
And today, you have the chance to tap into this life-changing biblical money code by visiting moneycode50.com.
That's moneycode, the number 50.com.
At moneycode50.com, you will find a free video that describes how you could use this biblical code in your own life to get out of debt and invest for profits.
That's moneycode50.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Reagan. If you think the worst of Obamacare is behind us, think again. Soon its new rules will affect every business, every insured person, and every Medicare recipient. That's why you need to protect yourself, your family, and your business with the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's easy to read, the fastest way for you to understand this law. The Obamacare Survival Guide gives you the tips, loopholes, and strategies you need to know. If you're insured on Medicare, a business, a medical professional, just about anyone, you need to get the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller, and already more than 500,000 Americans have gotten their copy. Newsmax says it's the best guide to the new law. The Obamacare Survival Guide is at bookstores everywhere, or get Newsmax's $4.95 special offer and save $15 off the cover price. Just go online now or call us today.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
By the content of that character. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Federal and state authorities urge every American family to have an emergency radio. It can save you and your loved ones from disaster. Now, Newsmax has an incredible offer for you. Get our Weather Band emergency radio free. This emergency radio picks up AM, FM, and the NOAA Weather Band. It even works without batteries, essential in an emergency. Call the number below right now and you'll get this emergency radio, plus 2 great publications, including the award-winning Newsmax magazine. Each month, Newsmax brings you the important stories you won't see anywhere else. Plus, you'll get incisive commentary from David Limbaugh, George Will, Michael Reagan, Ben Stein, Dr. Laura, and more. Ben Stein says Newsmax reveals the unafraid, uncomplicated, bare-knuckles truth about today's dangerous world. Mike Reagan says, I guarantee that you'll love Newsmax magazine. This emergency radio offer with Newsmax magazine won't last long. Order online or call the number on your screen right now.
You're back with us on America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., let's give everyone at home a quick update on the situation going on in the Ukraine right now. All right, Ukraine's new leadership has gathered some 20,000 men for the newly created National Guard in the country. The country accuses Russia of sending troops across their borders to stoke separatism in the country. This as tensions remain high following a referendum for the Crimean Peninsula to be annexed by Russia. Meanwhile, The Guardian reports that Russian President Vladimir Putin approved a draft bill for Russia to annex Crimea. Putin pushed ahead despite sanctions from the West. And President Obama, who is set to visit Europe next week to talk about the crisis with U.S. allies, warned of further action by Putin. Obama says if he continues to interfere with the Ukraine, the U.S. will be ready to impose further sanctions. Joining us right now to discuss the situation is Paul Gregory of the Hoover Institution. Also with us on set, J.D. Hayworth and Morgan Thompson. Great to have everyone here with us. Paul, as we're taking a look at we saw the reaction from Russian officials basically laughing off these sanctions. Is this proof that sanctions are not going to be enough here in this situation?
Well, I would call these wimpy sanctions, although 2 individuals from Putin's inner circle were selected. They were not the main figures, particularly those figures likely to have large sums of money hidden abroad. So I think sanctions on the true members of the inner circle could be effective, but not these wimpy ones.
Well, yeah, I've got to give you credit, Paul, because you've come up with a word that absolutely encapsulates it. Yesterday, we were searching around and we found a cinematic equivalent from Animal House, double secret probation. But this kind of sanctions that aren't really sanctions that cause problems for Mr. Putin and the Russians, what good are they? Does it not just reinforce a perception of weakness for the United States?
Do you have any that you suggest that might be stronger, might send a stronger message?
Well, very early on, I suggested if you want Putin's attention, go after his money. Putin is purported to be the richest man in the world, some $60–70 billion. He's the one who's ordered this invasion. So I don't see why he should not be the one subject to the sanction. If not Putin, then you go to the real inner circle, and these are people who are holding public office, earning supposedly modest salaries, but having billions of dollars secreted abroad. And if they were to object, you should ask, well, your public officials earning modest salaries, why should you worry about investing their attention?
Well, Paul, you certainly got my attention with the notion of going after Putin's billions. Now, how will we do that? Because ostensibly you would think he'd have this money secreted into Swiss accounts. Do we have the forensic accounting to really know where Putin may have his billions, and how could we really freeze those assets?
I think it's, you're talking to someone who has no insider knowledge of this.
Well, isn't this kind of like what we did with the Taliban? We followed the money trail.
Yeah, I think you know, U.S. Banking system still dominates the world. We are still able to call the tune, and we already do have some ideas as to how Putin got the money abroad, who were the people who were his money launderers, etc. So I'd be confident we could find the money.
Right.
Paul, I want to talk a little bit more about the idea of a wimpy president here real quickly, and I want to get to an op-ed piece that Mitt Romney recently wrote for the Wall Street Journal. It's in this morning's paper, and it talked about the situation in the Ukraine. We have a couple of graphics on that prepared. I want to skip ahead, if we can, to the second one, because that's where this gets interesting, particularly what Romney is talking about. President Obama and Secretary of State Clinton traveled the world in pursuit of their promise to reset relations and build friendships across the globe. The failure has been painfully evident. Moving on, a chastened President and Secretary of State Kerry, a year into this, can still do his job and can still yet succeed for the country's sake. They must succeed, but timing is of the essence. Romney, famously said during the campaign that Russia was our greatest geopolitical foe. What do you think about Romney's recent op-ed piece here? Is he right?
Well, I agree with this, and the American public, unfortunately, does not know that we've been in a Cold War for at least a decade. So anyone who's been paying attention to Russia and listening to their description of the nefarious and illegal and dangerous activity coming out of the United States against them, anyone who'd paid attention would really understand the current situation better. This has been, in my opinion, a rather closely guarded secret that the Cold War has been going on under Putin for at least a decade. The fundamental miscalculation of Obama is, and his administration, is that you can achieve some goals by being nice to Russia. That's not the way Putin's Russia works. You achieve your goals by exhibiting and demonstrating power. So I think it all goes back to this very fundamental misunderstanding of how Putin's Russia works.
Paul, you mentioned the American people, and I know you're probably familiar with the new CNN poll saying that 70% of the American people are really aware of this problem and quite concerned about it. But having said that, they really prefer to not get involved. Do you think that's a luxury we have? And do you think the American people understand that?
Well, unfortunately, we are in a dead end alley right now. What can we do? I think the damage has been largely done. There is a headline out there that people are missing, and that headline is that the European Union has decided, I think this Friday, to sign the association agreement with Ukraine. And this is what set this all off. This is what set off the Maidan demonstrations when Yanukovych reneged on signing the association agreement. And in my view, Putin's actions were set off as well by his fear of Ukraine becoming a part of Europe. The idea that Putin is after Crimea, I believe, is ridiculous. Crimea is just a small sideshow to Putin's overall plan, which is to destabilize all of Ukraine and eventually take it over. So the fact that the Europeans are going ahead and signing this association agreement to bring Ukraine into Europe, I think is extremely significant, and this has been overlooked. It's one of the few acts of bravery that one can see coming out of Europe on this point.
Well, Paul, we'll have to leave it there. We very much appreciate you going beyond the headlines. Paul Gregory, research fellow at the Hoover Institute, really outlining what has transpired, the transition from communism to kleptocracy in the Russian Federation. Hey, stay with us. When we come back, we'll be joined by the founder of the Faith and Freedom Coalition and author of the new book about how to restore our country's greatness by renewing our values. If you want to weigh in with us, social media the way to do it. You can tweet us at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum. Visit us at Facebook.com/Newsmax and send us your emails. Connect at NewsmaxTV.com. We'll be right back.
What you don't know about Pope Francis will shock you. Bestseller, Francis, A Pope for Our Time, tells the real story. Newsmax says Francis, A Pope for Our Time rips off the shroud of mystery about this man. Now Newsmax has a special offer for Francis, A Pope for Our Time. Get it for just $9.95 and save $12 off the cover price. Plus, we'll send you a free 1-year subscription to Newsmax magazine. That's a $40 value for free. Order now at popesagenda.com.
3 a.m. and you're up again for the third time. It's not just affecting your sleep, it's interrupting your daily life. Frequent trips to the bathroom due to an aging prostate is a common concern, but you can now do something about it with Prostate Revive. Doctor-formulated Prostate Revive is an all-natural dietary supplement packed with 15 powerful ingredients, focused on improving prostate health by targeting the two main sources of prostate concerns, rogue testosterone and inflammation. And now, in this limited time offer, you can try Prostate Revive absolutely free. That's a free bottle, a 30-day supply of Prostate Revive, risk-free. Plus, if you call right now, you'll also receive our free report, A Doctor's Guide to a Healthy Prostate. Call now for details on getting your free bottle, plus our doctor's report. Call 1-800-659-REVIVE. That's 1-800-659-REVIVE. Don't be a victim of an aging prostate. Start getting the sleep you need and get your life back with Prostate Revive. Claim your risk-free bottle now at 1-800-659-REVIVE.
Meet John and Nancy. Like many people, John and Nancy have spent their whole lives working hard, saving their money and investing wisely, knowing that it would pay off in the end. But the reality is, today's world is not the same as it was. John and Nancy's stocks have taken them on a serious roller coaster ride, and it's all but destroyed their retirement funds. Their house is not even close to being worth what they paid, and to boot, their middle-class paychecks no longer cover their costs. All that hard work and smart investing has gotten them nowhere. In fact, they are no longer thinking about when they will retire, they're wondering if they'll retire. Then one day, John and Nancy heard about a man named Tom Hutchison, a veteran of Wall Street for over 2 decades. Tom noticed that the wealthy invested differently than normal people, and their methods seemed to be a secret they didn't want to share. So Tom left his job, compiled the strategies, and published them in the controversial book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns. John and Nancy immediately picked up a copy, began investing, and never looked back. Thanks to Powerful Secrets, John and Nancy now have investments that pay up to 20% a year. They learned about unique tax-advantaged investments, and their favorite chapter revealed a strategy that anyone can use to turn $50,000 into $1 million. Now, John and Nancy have control of their financial future in this new reality, and they have peace of mind about their investments that they never had before. Best of all, they are back on track to a secure retirement. To get your free copy of the book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns, simply visit www.myfinancialage.org.
Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., a quick update on the situation in Ukraine right now. All right, as tensions continue to mount in Ukraine, NATO allies are conducting training exercises in Norway, not far from the Russian border. Meanwhile, Russia has officially signed a treaty to annex Crimea into its territory following a referendum in which Russian-speaking residents of the peninsula on the Black Sea overwhelmingly backed the vote. President Obama is headed to Eastern Europe next week, and Vice President Joe Biden is there as we speak. Today, he reacted to the annexation of Crimea by Putin and Russia.
We've joined Poland and the international community in condemning the continuing assault on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and the blatant violation of international law by Mr. Putin and Russia.
Biden standing next to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk right there. Some have called for the installation of NATO missiles in Poland, as the U.S. and NATO had promised to do a few years ago, but those plans were scrapped when the Obama administration started the reset treaty with the Russians. And now the search for the missing Malaysia Flight 370. It still has not produced any concrete evidence, but check this out, a new report from Newsmax partner site Lignet.com. According to a source at Boeing, the missing Malaysia flight may be in Pakistan. Some still doubt this theory is even possible. We'll have much more on this, plus the latest on the CIA and the Senate scandal with Lignet senior analyst Fred Fleitz later here on the show.
You know, it's interesting how much of an international focus suddenly the headlines and the priorities and the polling has going on. But politically, you take a look at what's happening, and even as the Republicans scrambled, as we said in our first hour, finding their consultant-driven equivalent of the Democrats' pajama boy, the fact is that issues predominate, and issues are not economic alone. There's a real hunger and passion for many within the conservative community to deal with issues of faith, to deal with issues of value, and the values voters, they are called. So joining us now is the founder. Apparently, we will have him a little bit later. That would be Ralph Reed. He's written a new book, Awakenings. Before we get Ralph, let's talk more about this, because, John, from time to time, you and I will have a debate in the Newsmax TV newsroom about what is more important, economic conservatism. Where does social conservatism fit in if the Republican Party is to add to its congressional majority in the House and perhaps take over the United States Senate?
Well, there's no question there's an argument to be made for social conservatives here, because we've seen the erosion of values impact our economics, and that's the issue here. But when you ask a majority of Americans, the people who vote and who go to the polls, they will still tell you overwhelmingly the thing they care most about are jobs and the economy. And it's easy to follow these shiny objects, as we heard Christian Whiting call them earlier, these foreign policy things. They're important, of course, but what really moves voters, particularly in these midterm elections, are the issue of jobs and the economy. Like James Carville famously said, it's the economy, stupid. It applied to Bill Clinton, it applies today, and it applies. It was my high school government teacher who said, people vote their pocketbooks. It's an axiom, it's true, and it always will be true.
I can recall my senior seminar at North Carolina State when we spoke about presidential power. And if you do take a look at American politics, really two issues predominate. Issues of pocketbook, but also issues involving life and death, which was why, as a baby boomer, when I was growing up amidst the Vietnam conflict, there was such social unrest. But of course, many people attach that same life and death import to the question of elective abortion in the United States, or abortion at any time. And again, it redounds to the notion of value voters. Let me offer a friendly amendment to what you say, recognizing the reality of what we can call economic primacy. It is always important not to try to be all things to all people, but to understand that the best way to enlarge the tent is to enlarge the issue base. And certainly because value voters, what was called during the Ronald Reagan era, the moral majority, now called the Coalition for Faith and Values, with the in-between part of the Christian Coalition, if you look back at the nomenclature of those years, why it's so important to have people added to the tent. The question becomes, John, in so doing, do you alienate the much vaunted independent voter, or those voters with more of a libertarian leaning, or is there a way to reconcile values voters and economically driven voters under the big tent of conservatism?
And of course, the question is, do you need to rally the base and get the people to the polls? Is that what's thwarting the Republican victories in these national elections, or is it simply that they don't have the demographics right now? And if we had the answer to those questions, JD, you'd probably be in the Senate right now, maybe someplace higher, and I would be working as a political consultant in Washington. Maybe.
This is just close circuit to CEO. This does not suggest any type of
we're very
dissatisfaction.
Happy to be here.
Yes,
we're very happy to
honored
be here.
And happy to be here, because you heard the pen is mightier than the sword. the microphone and emerging media, and what we have planned here at Newsmax TV is going to make a big impact in the months and years ahead.
But to answer your question, you have to do both. You have to get the voters out there, get them excited, and that's the base, but you also have to appeal to new voters. We know the GOP is trying to do this. We played some of those commercials. Whether or not they'll be effective, that remains to be seen. But you do that on the issues, JD, and you talk to folks in a way you haven't talked to them before, and that's what the party doesn't seem to be able to do.
And magically, if by sweetness and light, a note of unanimity, what has been the thread going through this discussion of how to attract voters? You do it not with having people who may look the trendiest, or I believe the nomenclature is hipster. No, you do it based on the issues, and that way across the demographic age groups you are able to attract voters. The other thing that happens, and we've discussed it before, political science may sound like an oxymoron. It's really not. In terms of electioneering, identify your voters and make sure they show up in greater numbers than your opponent. That's the simple way to win an election, but it's how you get there based on issues being the catalyst, and right now it appears issues are lining up for the conservatives and for the Republicans.
And the question is whether they can turn that into a monumental victory or avoid snatching defeat from the jaws of victory as they've been accused of doing in the past.
And as I was concerned about this new advertising approach by the Republican National Committee we showcased in Hour 1.
Yeah, exactly. Got to get to the issues, and we want to hear what your issues are and what you want to talk about. You can reach us on social media. The hashtag on Twitter is America's Forum. You can reach us at Newsmax TV. Find us on email, connect to newsmaxtv.com, or reach us on Facebook, facebook.com/Newsmax TV. Much more to come here on America's Forum right after this.
Newsmax Magazine is proud to present a unique tribute to our 40th president, Ronald Reagan. It is a very special documentary in our commemorative issue of Newsmax Magazine, celebrating the centennial of President Reagan's birth. First, here's a video clip from the award-winning documentary, Rendezvous with Destiny.
We're in the midst of a springtime of hope for America.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Impulses of an evil empire.
Tear down this wall.
I believe that together we can keep this rendezvous with destiny.
In the next several minutes, you will learn things about President Ronald Reagan that you've never seen, heard, or read before. Welcome to today's special Newsmax event celebrating the life and legacy of President Reagan. During this historic presentation, we will commemorate President Reagan's storied life. We'll revisit his 2 terms in office and recollect his proudest achievements and greatest challenges. Ronald Reagan's life reads like a fairy tale of success stories. He was an accomplished athlete, an honored veteran, a famous actor, the governor of California, and of course, our nation's 40th president.
He called himself a citizen politician and only entered politics when he warned government was gaining too much power. By then he was age 54, with a successful career behind him. Twice elected President of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan was a contradiction to some. Once a Democrat, then a Republican. A champion of smaller government whose own government grew. A fiscal conservative who failed to balance the budget. His critics mistook his affability for weakness, but behind the smile and the charm existed an extraordinary leader with unique skills and bold and revolutionary ideas.
We only had time to share just a few of the top defining moments in Ronald Reagan's presidency, but you'll get to see them all in Rendezvous with Destiny. By the way, the president's close relationship with the Pope is especially fascinating. You'll also learn how dealing with an alcoholic father helped shape Reagan's ability to negotiate. And if you ever wondered what the leader of the free world likes to get for the holidays, well, you'll find that out as well. So let's review today in this free offer. We are sending you a copy of Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny, and the collector's limited edition of our issue commemorating the 100th anniversary of President Reagan's birth.
Right now, when you subscribe to Newsmax Magazine, you can own both the DVD and receive the special Reagan 100th birthday commemorative edition. That's $25 in bonus gifts when you subscribe. Go to Newsmax.com/Reagan13 to subscribe today. Newsmax.com/Reagan13. Join the millions who read Newsmax magazine every month.
What can that be?
52-year-old male complaining of chest pains.
Clear.
If you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival.
Hi, my name is Dr. Crandall. As a cardiologist, I've dedicated the last 30 years to helping my patients win the fight against heart disease. That's why I wrote The Simple Heart Cure, to show you how easy it is to identify early warning signs, make simple heart-healthy changes, and reverse heart disease in just 90 days. You'll discover how to reduce your risk of heart attack by 61%. Lower your bad cholesterol, unclog your arteries naturally, safely lower your blood pressure, and so much more. This easy-to-read book shows you how to make simple changes to protect your heart.
Dr. Crandall's best-selling book is available at bookstores everywhere, or go online to heartcure211.com and get your copy for just $4.95.
Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. Thanks for sticking around.
And we're very pleased to be joined now via telephone, the founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition and the author of the new book, Awakening, Ralph Reed. Ralph, it is great to have you on America's Forum.
Thank you very much, J.D. Good to be with you.
Now, Ralph, we have a debate in the newsroom from time to time, and we had it before you joined us here. The debate about economic conservatives and social conservatives, values voters. How do you reconcile the two, or are those differences not insurmountable at all? What's going to be the key to the midterms for the conservative movement?
Well, I think, that's a tension that I think can be a healthy tension. My own view is that what ails America is sort of all of the above. I think our economic travails to some extent are a symptom of a much deeper problem. When you have a $17 trillion national debt, 40% of which has been run up in the last 5 years, and you have the overhang and the train wreck of Obamacare really threatening to destroy the finest healthcare system in the world today. And then you have $65 trillion in unfunded entitlement liabilities. JD, when you gaze out over something like that, and your economy is starting to look a lot more like the Eurozone than the U.S. economy of the 80s or 90s, or even the early 21st century, I don't think that that's just an economic or fiscal problem. I think it shows a deeper cultural, spiritual, and moral problem. And so I think what we have to do is offer a compelling critique on both cultural and economic issues. But here's the good news. I think the 2014 midterms are going to largely be a referendum on the failed presidency of Barack Obama generally, and specifically on Obamacare. And opposition to Obamacare unites social and economic conservatives on both moral and fiscal grounds.
Yeah, using both to argue the other could be an effective strategy here. Ralph, I know the book focuses on America and restoring American greatness, but I want to talk about another theme of the book that's also happening here in one way, but also more obviously overseas as well, and that's the persecution of Christians. Specifically, we want to talk about a Washington Times story, an issue that was covered recently. Kim Jong-un, the dictator of North Korea, has called for the execution of 33 people who just had some brief contact with a Christian missionary in North Korea, and we still have this issue of Kenneth Bae, the American, who's held there. When you look at this in context of what else is happening around the world, the persecution of Christians, Ralph, when is this ever going to stop, and what can be done from here in the United States to stop this?
Well, I think, I have a chapter titled The War on Christianity, and I talk about the Muslim Brotherhood's terror campaign against Coptic Christians and other believers in Egypt, talk about the imprisonment and the assassination of professing Christians in Pakistan, You look at the virtual liquidation of the Christian community, tragically, in Iraq, since we liberated Iraq from Saddam Hussein, and it's very troubling. But you've got to make that issue a centerpiece of U.S. foreign policy. If the Secretary of State and the President are not jawboning diplomats and heads of state and not making this a priority, it doesn't get the kind of attention that it should. And the problem is it's difficult for this administration to make hostility against Christians a major foreign policy priority because they're conducting their own war against Christianity right here at home. Obviously, it doesn't involve violence like it does in the Middle East, but if you look at the HHS mandate, you look at the harassment by the IRS of Christian and pro-life groups, it's a serious problem, and this administration has shown insensitivity and at times hostility towards people of faith in the public square.
Ralph, I don't know if we could borrow a page from the Bush lexicon, soft bigotry, but it seems the secularists within the Obama administration are trying to change the whole notion of freedom of religion to say what you want to preach in your house of worship and your home are things unique to you, and that's well and good, but don't dare bring it into the marketplace. At least that argument seems to be made to Christians. And then today in the Twin Cities, you have the spectacle of the female chief of police in Minneapolis wearing a hijab for Hijab Day. You have foot baths for the cab drivers at the Minneapolis St. Paul Airport. You have some suburbs in Minnesota apparently ready to embrace or at least tolerate Sharia law. What is going on with tolerance for other faiths but not for Christianity in the marketplace?
Well, I think unfortunately, bigotry against evangelical Christians is the last acceptable form of bigotry left in the country, and I think, frankly, even all Orthodox believers, including faithful Catholics and many times observant Jews, and if you think that's an overstatement, look at Bill Maher's comments this past week about people who believe in the biblical story of Noah, basically calling them stupid. He's previously suggested that Christians suffer from a neurological disorder, that they're basically mentally ill. And with regard to the administration, JD, I talked about the IRS harassment of Christian and pro-life groups where they've basically had IRS agents quiz Christians on the content of their prayers. You look at the administration refusing to support the institution of marriage, and the U.S. Attorney General telling state attorneys general that they're not required to defend their state constitutions and their laws in court. And then finally, look at the Hosanna Tabor case. This involved a Lutheran church, I believe it was in Oregon, where they dismissed a minister and a teacher, and the Obama administration went into federal court and argued that a church did not have the right to hire and fire its own ministers.
Well, the list of grievances is very long and very concerning. Ralph, we'd like to stick around if you could. We got to run to commercial break right now. We want to keep this conversation going. Can you stick around with us?
Yes, I can.
All right,
good.
Excellent.
We'll have you back, Ralph. Ralph, the author of the new book, Awakenings. How do we have an awakening amidst all of this growing secularization in our great republic? We'll talk more about that, and you can weigh in on it too. Tweet us at NewsmaxTV, hashtag America's Forum. America's Forum coming right back.
If you have high cholesterol, you probably think that taking a statin drug is the best way to lower it. After all, why wouldn't you? Statins are among the most prescribed drugs in the world. But although they are great medications to those who truly need them, other people can lower their cholesterol just by adding certain foods to their diet. Here are the 3 cholesterol-lowering foods that you'll find at your supermarket. Number 1 is oatmeal. Oatmeal is a potent cholesterol-lowering food because oats are a soluble fiber. This means that they absorb the excess cholesterol in your digestive system and carry it out of your body. In addition, oatmeal also helps prevent diabetes and cancer as well. In fact, research shows that eating oatmeal on a regular basis can be as effective as taking a statin. Second, choose salmon over beef and you'll be replacing a food packed with cholesterol-raising saturated fat with one rich in monounsaturated fat. This is the type of good fat that makes salmon taste fattening, but it's not. Salmon is also packed with omega-3 fatty acids, which lower triglycerides, another dangerous blood fat. Third, if it's mid-afternoon and you're craving a snack, grab a handful of almonds. Eating almonds every day lowers your bad LDL cholesterol by about 9%. Almonds are also packed with other vitamins as well, but the best thing about almonds is that they don't taste like a health food. Almonds contain no cholesterol and are also packed with healthy monounsaturated oils. Since most of you are already reading my book, The Simple Heart Cure, I want you to go to chapter 11, in which I tell you about foods that can help you lower your cholesterol. I'm Dr. Chauncey Crandall, and thanks for watching this Health Minute. I'll see you next time.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with this special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger. Tear down this wall.
Not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Attention seniors and baby boomers. A new website has been created just for you. MyBenefits811.com. At MyBenefits811.com, we reveal a weird trick that could help you add $152,000 to your Social Security payouts. For example, did you know how you file for Social Security can dramatically change the amount of money you collect? One simple step could add up to $1,000 to your monthly payouts. And other strategies we found reveal 33 ways for big savings on your health care. At MyBenefits811.com, you will also discover how you could save up to 50% on your groceries, along with 49 other ways to save as much as $50,000 starting today. Newsmax says MyBenefits811.com is a critical resource for anyone over the age of 50. So go to MyBenefits811.com now to find out how you could add extra money to your Social Security checks. That's MyBenefits811.com, MyBenefits811.com.
Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. Sticking around with us for another segment is the founder and chairman of the Faith and Freedom Coalition, Ralph Reed. His new book is called Awakening. And Ralph, thanks so much for sticking around with us. We have the book up on the screen right now. And you mentioned those comments from Bill Maher on his show over the weekend. We thought about playing those, but we figured we'd rather talk about the book, right? It's more important, at least for our audience.
Right.
And we don't need to hear, I think for a lot of us who are people of faith, we don't need to hear the routine blasphemy that's become so commonplace within the so-called creative community.
Yeah, we know who he is. We know what he's about. We shouldn't let it get to us. He's going to say it anyway, right?
No, I think that's right. And I think what's unfortunate is that you see what Yale law professor Stephen L. Carter famously called the culture of disbelief in popular culture, in Hollywood, the denigration, the demeaning, the marginalization of faith. You also see it in public policy. I mentioned the Obama administration, the IRS, the Justice Department, the Hosanna Tabor case, where they argued that a church shouldn't be allowed to hire and fire its own ministers of the gospel. And, J.D., that's not just saying you ought to keep your religion in your closet and the four walls of your church. That's saying that within the four walls of your church, you don't get to decide what you teach. And this is very chilling, and that's why I do not think that I overstate the case when you combine it with Obama going to Turkey, I believe it is, and at a news conference saying that America was no longer a Christian nation, when you look at the fact that this administration canceled a grant to work with human trafficking victims for the U.S. Catholic Bishops Conference because the Catholic Church is pro-life. I mean, this is really insensitivity and at times hostility to the expression of faith in the public square and even at times within the four walls of the church.
So what happens? Obviously, we settle issues in this country via ballots. Does this rise of secularism or hostility toward the church from the Obama administration, does it prompt an outpouring of the evangelical and the Orthodox vote in the midterms?
Well, obviously we'll know in November, but I think you have a little bit of a glimmer and potentially a foreshadowing in what happened in the special election in Florida 13. This was a district that Alex Sink, the Democratic candidate, won twice. This is a district that Barack Obama won twice. This was a district where the Republican nominee, David Jolly, was outspent 3-1 by opponent, and yet he won. Now, it was a very close race. It was about 3,000 votes out of 183,000.
But Ralph, it highlights your fact that this is going to be a referendum on Obamacare specifically those Medicare cuts that have been forced by the implementation of Obamacare. We got to go to a commercial break, but we want to thank Ralph Reed for sticking around for that extra segment because it's always great to get a little bit more Ralph Reed on the show.
The new book is called Awakening, and it'll be available at a big bookstore near you.
Online as well.
And speaking of online, get in touch with us using social media, Twitter at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum, Hour 3 coming up.
More than 76 million Americans are currently living with high blood pressure, but only about half of them have their blood pressure under control. Controlling blood pressure is mandatory because if it's not controlled, you're at great risk for such deadly conditions as heart attack, stroke, congestive heart failure, and kidney disease. Most doctors consider uncontrolled hypertension as an excuse to prescribe more medication, but there can be some hidden reasons why your blood pressure is persistently too high. To find out, here are the important questions you must ask your doctor. First, ask your doctor if there could be an underlying reason why your blood pressure is too high. The vast majority of people have essential high blood pressure, which means that it occurs for no identifiable cause. But some people have secondary high blood pressure, which means there is another condition involved, and once it is treated, their high blood pressure disappears. Here are the major causes of secondary high blood pressure: kidney problems or disorders, adrenal gland tumors, certain defects in blood vessels you're born with, congenital, illegal drugs such as cocaine and amphetamines. Second, ask your doctor if any medications you are on could be causing your blood pressure to rise. Certain medications such as birth control pills, cold remedies, decongestants, over-the-counter pain relievers, and some prescription drugs can cause or contribute to high blood pressure. This is a possibility when you consider that nearly half of all Americans over the age of 55 are on at least one prescription drug. Many take multiple prescription drugs, and almost everyone uses over-the-counter remedies. Since most of you already have my book, The Simple Heart Cure, I want you to go to chapter 12, which is all about high blood pressure. Now here's what I want you to do. Go to your medicine cabinet and make a list of the drugs that you take. Include the over-the-counter ones as well. Check their labels or informational brochures. Do any of them list hypertension or high blood pressure as a side effect? If so, bring them to the attention of your doctor. They could be contributing to your high blood pressure. That's my health tip for this week, but I'll see you next week with another very important Heart Health Minute.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with his special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Meet Jim. Like many of us, Jim enjoys a busy life. Between work, family, and friends, his days zip along. And Jim has the energy to tackle almost anything. But lately, Jim's get up and go has literally taken on a new meaning. Jim's always put focus on a full night's sleep, but it seems like these days, he's up and down to go to the bathroom so many times he can barely wake up in the morning. His prostate concerns have him sad, tired, and worried. Activities that were once enjoyable now seem like a chore for Jim. His golf game is at the mercy of his bathroom schedule. Family outings are planned around it too. Jim even has difficulty going to the bathroom. He's tried so many prostate remedies he can't keep them straight, but nothing ever seems to help. Then Jim found out about Prostate Revive, the all-natural dietary supplement specifically formulated for men, targeted towards improving and sustaining normal prostate function. Prostate Revive includes 15 super ingredients never combined before, including saw palmetto extract, beta-cytosterol, pomegranate fruit extract, selenium, and other high-quality nutrients. These targeted and all-natural ingredients promote healthy urinary flow and optimal prostate health. And the best part is, Prostate Revive was developed by a renowned medical doctor. Dr. David Brownstein personally formulated Prostate Revive with one goal in mind, to promote a healthy prostate gland. Thanks to Prostate Revive, Jim's got his life back. He gets a full night's sleep every night, and his friends and his wife can't believe he's the same guy. He has his old energy back, and no one has to wait for him. He doesn't even think about his prostate concerns anymore. Visit MedicSelect.com to take back your nights and improve your quality of life with Prostate Revive.
Learn about our risk-free trial offer at prostaterevive.com/Jim.
As the search for Flight 370 continues, a source at Boeing tells Newsmax partner Lignet.com the plane may have landed in Pakistan. Could Flight 370 have slipped under radar and landed at a Taliban base close to the Afghan border? Coming up, we're joined by Fred Flights, analyst at Lignet.com, to discuss the latest on the disappearance and the possibility of Taliban involvement.
Meantime, California's drought continues to worsen, and some in the climate change crowd say it's all because of human influence. Ahead, we'll talk to the author of Climate of Corruption, Politics and Power Behind the Global Warming Hoax, Professor Larry Bell.
And new figures out today show the housing starts continued to decline last month. February's rate came in slightly below expectations, but building permits are looking better. Coming up, we'll talk to Kathy Fetke of the Real Worth Network to join us about the real estate sector. Next on America's Forum.
We should not allow a tiny minority of shoddy scientists and science and extreme ideologues to compete with scientific fact.
John Kerry's a busy guy right now with everything going on, but he still had time not long ago to stop in Indonesia to talk about a climate change action plan. But despite his attempt to redress the issue of conflicting scientific reports, the debate over climate change continues to divide experts. Dr. Patrick Moore, co-founder of Greenpeace, quit the organization in 1986 after it strayed away from its objective science and took a sharp political turn to the left. He took issue with the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that since the mid-20th century, it's extremely likely that human influence has been the dominant cause of observed warming. Moore continued to say that there is no scientific proof that human emissions of carbon dioxide are the dominant cause of the minor warming the Earth's atmosphere has experienced over the last 100 years. He told a Senate committee that there is also that when modern life evolved over 500 million years ago, CO2 was more than 10 times higher than it is today, yet life flourished at the time. There is so much information out there right now, J.D., that anybody can make a case on either side of this argument. But we got to talk to a guy that we know and trust very well.
And that's what we want to do right now. Joined on the phone, we are by Professor Larry Bell, director of the Geraldine Hines School of Architecture, University of Houston, and author of the book Climate of Corruption, Politics and Power Behind the Global Warming Hoax. Professor Bell, welcome to America's Forum.
Well, good morning, fellas.
It's great to have you here on the show with us.
Now,
well, it's always good to be on. Thanks.
Your book deals with debunking several so-called myths on climate change. Would you elaborate for us what you believe to be the major myths of this climate change argument being made by so many on the left?
Well, first of all, they rephrase the argument where in many cases there's no argument whatsoever. They, as you well know, they talk. First it was global warming, and then it was climate change. And first of all, I don't know anyone that disputes that there's been some warming since about 1850, since the last little ice age. There's been about 1.5 degrees of warming every 100 years, and that seems to be continuing. Although for this past 17 years, global temperatures have been totally flat, and they may resume. They may continue to get cooler. Some people predict that's going to happen because particularly some changes on the sun that happen intermittently, and then some people are thinking it may continue to warm. But there's absolutely nothing new about climate change. It's been changing for hundreds of millions of years, although recently not so much.
Now, Larry, a common slogan used in following politics and really any endeavor is follow the money. If we follow the money in this global or this climate change debate, where is the money going and why?
Well, you've got to understand it's a multi-billion-dollar industry just for the research alone, and if the scare goes away, then the money for these, foundations and university departments and so on that are studying this stuff, the money goes away. So you got to keep a strong fear factor going. The United Nations, of course, wants to keep it going because it's another excuse to distribute money because we're, of course, wrecking the climate, wrecking the planet. And so that, give us, if we provide a lot of money to some of these other countries, of course, the problem will go away, I suppose. There's also, without the climate thing, a lot of, most of the argument for all this renewable energy stuff goes away because, it's all this anti-carbon stuff, which is supposed to be killing the climate, and that's a bunch of nonsense. There's never ever been a study that's indicated any measurable effect of carbon dioxide, human carbon dioxide on climate. Matter of fact, it's, our contribution, if you look at carbon dioxide levels at 4/100 to 1% of the atmosphere, humans only contribute about 3% of that 4/100 to 1%. It's barely a trace. And there's never been any measurement of impact. Theoretically, could it have some influence? Certainly. It can also have some cooling influences as the oceans, which are huge carbon dioxide sinks. As they warm, they release carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, and they also release a lot of water vapor, which is the largest greenhouse gas, which produces low-level clouds, which produces cooling. So, it's a balancing act, and nature is very good at that.
Well, you talked about the fear aspect of all this, Professor Bell. I want to talk about a recent Wall Street Journal article that took a look at food prices in association with the drought out in California. The article and others have talked about as global temperatures continue to increase, we're only going to experience more droughts and food shortages here. This is one of the things that's being used by the folks who are trying to pimp this climate change agenda here to help sell the narrative. What's the comeback to that, and how do folks who believe that you do and many people else out there believe that this might be a hoax, how do you combat that in a debate?
Well, first you look out the window and you realize that there's been no warming for the last 17 years. So how do you explain the drought in California? Things always, there's always changes in temperature. The global temperatures, from 1910 to 1940. We we saw warming from 1940 to late 70s. It was flat to cooling temperatures, and all of a sudden, mid to late 70s, the next ice age was coming, and it was all over the New York Times and so on. And then about 12 years later, Al Gore has his hearings in Washington. Oh my God, the Earth's on fire, and we're having global warming. That was 1988, and then 1998 we had the big El Nino year, but we've had no warming in 17 years. So first of all, blaming the drought on global warming is nonsensical, and we haven't had global warming for 17 years. The time most high school students today have been alive, we haven't had any statistical warming. Second of all, carbon dioxide, if that's the issue, is plant food. It makes plants grow warmer. There weren't a lot of jungles, there weren't a lot of rainforests back in the ice age, which dominate the planet about 90% of the time. So, the warmer climates, the carbon dioxide is what is plant food. It makes plants grow. It nourishes. All this great advances of civilization have occurred in the warm years. You had the medieval warm period, which was 1,000 years ago. You had Eric the Red in Greenland, raising sheep and goats on the grasslands of western coast of Greenland. I was in Greenland in the 60s. I didn't see a whole lot of sheep and goats. I want to say that.
Well, Larry, let's pick up again the political science angle. Twice now you've mentioned the name of Al Gore. Before we brought you on, we heard from our own Secretary of State, John Kerry, speaking about the challenges of climate change. Why is our Secretary of State, Mr. Kerry, telling the world climate change is a weapon of mass destruction?
Well, I think there's, I can offer a couple theories. One, I think Kerry's been seeking a Nobel Peace Prize for a long time. Heck, if Gore got one and Jimmy Carter got one and Barack Obama got one for just showing up, I wouldn't John Kerry be always, well, he's been a big climate beater for some time. So so one thing is if you can't settle the Middle East and all these other problems, let's fight climate. Sure, we're going to win that one. And
a hedge on the foreign policy debate. Larry Bell, thanks so much for being with us. Always great to get your insight on this. This issue is not going away. The debate continues no matter how much evidence is out there right now. Larry Bell with us from the University of Houston.
And up next, while the search for the missing Malaysian jetliner is scaling back, unconfirmed claims surface that the plane might have landed in Pakistan. More on that when we return.
Imagine if you had a secret code for making money, a code buried deep within biblical texts.
A code that certain investment titans have quietly exploited to amass billions.
And what if this code could be used by you today to unlock vast amounts of wealth safely and ethically?
Investment expert and former pastor Sean Hyman says there is such a code. He calls it the Biblical Money Code. Sean credits this code for helping him turn his father's $40,000 retirement account into $396,000.
And today, you have the chance to tap into this life-changing biblical money code by visiting moneycode50.com.
That's moneycode, the number 50.com.
At moneycode50.com, you will find a free video that describes how you could use this biblical code in your own life to get out of debt and invest for profits.
That's moneycode50.com.
Hi, I'm Mike Reagan. If you think the worst of Obamacare is behind us, think again. Soon its new rules will affect every business, every insured person, and every Medicare recipient. That's why you need to protect yourself, your family, and your business with the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's easy to read, the fastest way for you to understand this law. The Obamacare Survival Guide gives you the tips, loopholes, and strategies you need to know. If you're insured on Medicare, a business, a medical professional, just about anyone, you need to get the Obamacare Survival Guide. It's a #1 New York Times bestseller, and already more than 500,000 Americans have gotten their copy. Newsmax says it's the best guide to the new law. The Obamacare Survival Guide is at bookstores everywhere, or get Newsmax's $4.95 special offer and save $15 off the cover price. Just go online now or call us today.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger and called to defend freedom.
But by the content of their character. Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Federal and state authorities urge every American family to have an emergency radio. It can save you and your loved ones from disaster. Now, Newsmax has an incredible offer for you. Get our Weather Band emergency radio free. This emergency radio picks up AM, FM, and the NOAA Weather Band. It even works without batteries, essential in an emergency. Call the number below right now and you'll get this emergency radio, plus 2 great publications, including the award-winning Newsmax magazine. Each month, Newsmax brings you the important stories you won't see anywhere else. Plus, you'll get incisive commentary from David Limbaugh, George Will, Michael Reagan, Ben Stein, Dr. Laura, and more. Ben Stein says Newsmax reveals the unafraid, uncomplicated, bare-knuckles truth about today's dangerous world. Mike Reagan says, I guarantee that you'll love Newsmax magazine. This emergency radio offer with Newsmax magazine won't last long. Order online or call the number on your screen right now.
Over the past 24 hours, we have been working hard with other countries to narrow the search corridors. Our focus is on 4 tasks: gathering information from satellite surveillance, analysis of surveillance radar data, increasing air and surface assets, and increasing the number of technical and subject matter experts.
Malaysian authorities still at a loss to provide an explanation for the disappearance of Flight 370. But the government is now investigating the possibility that the aircraft avoided radar detection and landed in Pakistan. Dismissed the idea that a Boeing 777 could land undetected inside the country, but promised to work with the Malaysian government in its search for the missing plane. The Langley Intelligence Group network, LIGNET, received information from a source close to Boeing that the company believes the plane did in fact land in Pakistan. But so far, satellite images of the area have yet to discover any trace of the 7,500-foot runway. And Pakistan has many of them, meaning that Flight 370 could conceivably be hidden in a hangar inside the country. For now, though, the pilot remains the focus of the investigation. We welcome you back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. So many questions remain here, J.D. This sounds like it would be entirely impossible, but then you think about where Osama bin Laden was for 10 years inside Pakistan, with the eyes of the world looking for him, not showing up until we went in there and got him. So got a lot to talk about this one.
And we are joined now via Skype by Chief LIGNET Analyst Fred Fleitz. Fred, welcome back to America's Forum. And this story, when we heard about this earlier today, you've highlighted it on your website, and we've been talking about it. Trace this back for us. Exactly who is saying what about a 777 ending up in Pakistan?
Well, J.D. and John, it's good to be here. Let me caution that we can't confirm this information, but we believe it is a piece of information that needs to be taken seriously. This information was obtained by a LIGNET analyst who used to work for the CIA Director of Operations, and he has a source who spoke to someone inside of Boeing, and according to his source, Boeing engineers believe this airplane landed somewhere in Pakistan.
Now, as we hear this, as fantastic as it sounds, what evidence can you analyze that might lend credence to this theory, Fred?
Well, there's very little evidence, but if we were to accept this at face value, it would be consistent with reports right now that this was a hijacking, and it was a hijacking that had a great deal of planning and technical know-how. It now appears that the change in the plane's heading was made by someone who had a very sophisticated understanding of how to reset the plane and how to turn off the navigational beacons. Does this indicate that the person who did this had the technical know-how to fly the plane to Pakistan and avoid numerous radar systems by various countries? I mean, some experts think that that is a stretch, but if that's the case, this report is consistent with that line of argument.
All right, and Fred, of course, you're a former CIA analyst, so you have some experience in this field of taking bits of information like this and extrapolating on what they could mean. Of course, you know, Pakistan has an adversarial relationship with the United States, you know, if not officially, unofficially. Is there any reason to believe that the Pakistani government, if this is true, would know about it and turn the other way just to ignore it? Or is this in an area of the country that is so remote that the Taliban has total control and autonomy to do something like this?
Well, it's hard to see how this airplane could penetrate Pakistani and probably Indian airspace without being seen. I mean, the Pakistan government presumably would not be in on the hijacking of this plane, and their aviation authorities would be alarmed if they saw a plane this large flying over their airspace without being detected. It's technically possible this plane flew low enough that it wasn't detected, but there's other experts who dismiss that possibility.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, we take a look at this, a huge plane, but how low would it have to go to escape radar detection, Fred?
Well, I don't have the background to give that judgment, but what I have read from other experts is that they're divided. Some think it's possible. Some say this is a flying bus that would be impossible to evade from the radar detection of countries like India and Pakistan.
Fred, one other question about this. While we have been mentioning the Taliban prominently, given the geopolitical realities in Pakistan, there are other organizations conceivably who could have a hand in this. Who else might have something to do with this?
Well, it sounds like a terrorist operation that could have been launched by the Taliban or maybe by Iran. I mean, this would be if this is really a terrorist operation that brought a civilian airliner into Pakistan, this would have taken a great deal of money and planning. This looks like core al-Qaeda. This looks like Iran, if that's what happened.
Yeah, now you mentioned core al-Qaeda, Fred, and one thing I know we talked about in the past is that there remains this obsession with aircraft-based terrorism within the core of al-Qaeda. Is that correct?
That's correct. And it's pretty clear that al-Qaeda is taking steps to get around the extensive aviation security measures that have been taken since 2001. We've seen this with the underwear bomber. There was a package bomb, a bomb hidden inside a printer cartridge that was sent from Yemen to London to the United States, almost got to the United States. It's possible, theoretically possible, that they found a new hole in the security net for this incident.
And Fred, keeping with that theme, you know, there is that al-Qaeda sponsored magazine, Inspire, that in its latest issue is calling for renewed attacks here in America, car bombs, a variety of different things to instill terror. And when we take a look at the involvement here, what would have to happen to take over this plane? It seems that asymmetrical warfare goes out the window in terms of maximizing casualties and having an incident that would, well, inspire terror. Is it possible these groups have turned the page away from asymmetrical terrorism to a form of air piracy?
I don't think they ever dropped their interest in air piracy and taking over aircraft. I think they're interested in asymmetrical attacks, but they continue to probe for vulnerabilities. They may have found that aviation security at Malaysian airports were weak. They may have found that this is an airline where the cockpit door is not always secure, and we've heard a number of reports about that. I think al-Qaeda and other radical Islamists are opportunistic. They'll take any opportunity they can to launch a terrorist attack against the West.
And with that in mind, Fred, Lignet also reporting today that Israel is especially wary of a commercial jetliner type attack at this point in time?
Israel is always concerned about incidents like this, and if this plane is in Pakistan, which I have to say I don't think that's likely, but I don't discount this report by the Boeing source. I think Israel's taking it very seriously and knowing that if this plane is going to be used as a weapon, they would probably be the target.
All right, Fred, thanks for your insight. We got to run here. And the other thing we got to ask is, where are the passengers if this scenario is true? Unlikely, as Fred said, but something we got to consider without any real concrete evidence out there.
Well, the mystery continues to mystify all of us and leads to so many different scenarios. Sure, this especially intriguing, coming from Lignet.com.
Absolutely. Make sure you check it out. We want to hear from you. What do you think about this theory? Is it any more plausible than the rest of them out there? Reach out to us on social media. You can find us at Newsmax TV, hashtag America's Forum on Twitter. Connect at newsmaxtv.com is the email address, and on Facebook, facebook.com/Newsmax TV. Stay with us. We'll have much more on the show coming up, including some of your comments later on.
What you don't know about Pope Francis will shock you. Bestseller, Francis, A Pope for Our Time, tells the real story. Newsmax says Francis, A Pope for Our Time, rips off the shroud of mystery about this man. Now Newsmax has a special offer for Francis, A Pope for Our Time. Get it for just $9.95 and save $12 off the cover price. Plus, we'll send you a free 1-year subscription to Newsmax magazine. That's a $40 value for free. Order now at popesagenda.com.
3 a.m. and you're up again for the third time. It's not just affecting your sleep, it's interrupting your daily life. Frequent trips to the bathroom due to an aging prostate is a common concern, but you can now do something about it with Prostate Revive. Doctor-formulated Prostate Revive is an all-natural dietary supplement packed with 15 powerful ingredients, focused on improving prostate health by targeting the two main sources of prostate concerns, rogue testosterone and inflammation. And now, in this limited time offer, you can try Prostate Revive absolutely free. That's a free bottle, a 30-day supply of Prostate Revive, risk-free. Plus, if you call right now, you'll also receive our free report, A Doctor's Guide to a Healthy Prostate. Call now for details on getting your free bottle, plus our doctor's report. Call 1-800-659-REVIVE. That's 1-800-659-REVIVE. Don't be a victim of an aging prostate. Start getting the sleep you need and get your life back with Prostate Revive. Claim your risk-free bottle now at 1-800-659-REVIVE.
Meet John and Nancy. Like many people, John and Nancy have spent their whole lives working hard, saving their money and investing wisely, knowing that it would pay off in the end. But the reality is, today's world is not the same as it was. John and Nancy's stocks have taken them on a serious roller coaster ride, and it's all but destroyed their retirement funds. Their house is not even close to being worth what they paid, and to boot, their middle-class paychecks no longer cover their costs. All that hard work and smart investing has gotten them nowhere. In fact, they are no longer thinking about when they will retire, they're wondering if they'll retire. Then one day, John and Nancy heard about a man named Tom Hutchison, a veteran of Wall Street for over 2 decades. Tom noticed that the wealthy invested differently than normal people, and their methods seemed to be a secret they didn't want to share. So Tom left his job, compiled the strategies, and published them in the controversial book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns. John and Nancy immediately picked up a copy, began investing, and never looked back. Thanks to Powerful Secrets, John and Nancy now have investments that pay up to 20% a year. They learned about unique tax-advantaged investments, and their favorite chapter revealed a strategy that anyone can use to turn $50,000 into $1 million. Now, John and Nancy have control of their financial future in this new reality, and they have peace of mind about their investments that they never had before. Best of all, they are back on track to a secure retirement. To get your free copy of the book, Powerful Secrets to Achieve Superior Returns, simply visit www.myfinancialage.org.
Welcome back to America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. J.D., following up with the story we we're just talking about, a quick update again on the search for Malaysia Flight 370. The search for the plane still has not yielded any concrete information, but we want to just rehash the interview we did with Fred Fleitz and a story that's on one of our partner sites, lignet.com. According to a source at Boeing, the missing Malaysia flight may be in Pakistan. We just heard from Lignet senior analyst Fred Fleitz. He said that scenario is unlikely, but still something worth considering, and that he is giving some deference to these reports here, and we're going to work a little bit harder to track down more information. Fred Fleitz. He said that scenario is unlikely, but still something worth considering, and that he is giving some deference to these reports here, and we're going to work a little bit harder to track down more information to see if there's any truth to any of this. Also, meanwhile, in Russia, they have signed a treaty to annex Crimea into its territory following a referendum in which most of the Russian speakers in the region, in the peninsula, on the Black Sea, overwhelmingly backed the move. President Obama is headed to Eastern Europe next week, and Vice President Joe Biden is there right now. Today, he reacted to the annexation of Crimea by Vladimir Putin and Russia.
We've joined Poland and the international community in condemning the continuing assault on Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and the blatant violation of international law by Mr. Putin and Russia.
That was Biden standing next to Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk there. Some, of course, have called for the installation of NATO missiles in Poland, as the U.S. and NATO promised a few years ago. But those plans were scrapped when the Obama administration started the reset treaty with the Russians. Also, something else happening at the White House today. Many people, including Melvin Morris, a retired Army sergeant, will receive the Medal of Honor. Mr. Morris or Sergeant Morris, I should say, is one of 3 living vets who are going to receive the honor at the White House today. 21 others will receive it posthumously. The veterans awarded these medals today fought in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. And J.D., we talked about this earlier in the show. You were hesitant to take some credit for this, but you did play a small role back in 2002 when you were still in Congress. You and your colleagues voted to have a congressional investigation to look at some of these war records for these vets who are minorities who may have been overlooked for medals they deserved because of their race.
And one of the challenges that many vets, regardless of their background, will tell you about, sometimes with Veterans Affairs records, there was a huge fire in St. Louis in the 1960s. A lot of records went missing as a result. And certainly when it comes to tales of heroism and valor on the battlefield, there are exacting standards for the Medal of Honor. But several of these cases were worth a re-examination, and that's why Sergeant Morris and others will be honored this afternoon at the White House. We welcome it. Why? Because it's the right thing to do. Yeah, and that's what's happening.
It certainly is, and so we'll look forward to that later this afternoon at the White House. But also, we want to talk about some of the other stories making news right now, specifically on Newsmax. Newsmax.com, and another story involving Malaysia radar, or the autopilot, whatever it is called, was maybe programmed to turn. Joining us right now to discuss this story, leading Newsmax.com right now, is the website's managing editor, Tim Colley. Tim, as always, great to have you here with us. Tell us about this program turn and what investigators are focusing on right now.
Basically, and I'm going to speak in a little, there's a computer set up in a cockpit of this size. Now, I'm not a pilot, but what apparently these experts have talked to the New York Times first and some other media outlets today, that is that this was programmed into, you program in your route into a computer. This turn, this questionable, was programmed in, which again is one more piece of evidence that suggests we're dealing with deliberation rather than an accident, some kind of hijacking or a very hurried event. It was deliberately programmed into the computer in which you put your routes into it. Now, of course, this is a highly specialized piece of gear. So aside from the pilot, had somebody who's a veteran pilot of one of these types of
Tim, elsewhere internationally, we take a look at what's going on in Crimea and in the Ukraine. We understand now that there has been one casualty on the part of the Ukrainians. What is transpiring right now? The Russian forces and the Ukrainians?
Yeah, I think the motto could quite frankly be Bosnia for what's happening there. For reports of Ukrainian outposts being stormed by what appear to be paramilitary, perhaps Russian troops in civilian garb. The Ukrainian ministry in just the last 5 minutes has authorized its troops in Crimea, in other words, if they're attacked. So that authorization has been given. You've got at least one soldier dead, reported dead, and you've got shooting taking place in at least 3 different reported areas from the latest report.
And what are some of the sources of this information coming out right now, Tim? What seems to be the most credible source of this information you're finding?
Right now, it's the Ukrainians, of course. Services are all reporting this. CNN just reported again, website this authorization to use live fire. So it's coming from fairly reputable sources. It isn't, and they're not quoting rumor; they're quoting officials with the Ukrainian ministry and others. Of course, the Russians aren't really talking precisely because they're not even admitting to some degree that they're even there in Ukraine. So it's still the fog of war at this point. But
well, not only the fog of war, but Tim, as you were relating, if these are Russian troops devoid of any insignia, trying to appear as paramilitary forces, this is yet another violation of international law in terms of the rules of warfare. I realize we have entered horribly a stage in an age of terrorism where there's asymmetrical warfare, but for the Russians to deny their national adds another wrinkle. I don't know if we're going to hear anything from the World Court or The Hague, but certainly there could be that possibility if these forces in fact turn out to be Russians dressed in paramilitary garb.
Yeah, this is a complete ripping up of every treaty, at least going back to World War II. You've got the first annexation of territory in Europe since World War II, and now you've got what looks to be a hot war taking place right in the area.
Again, thanks so much for being here on the show. And JD, this is just a reminder of how delicate things can be when you have order, a miscalculation, maybe a shot went off or whatever happened, but it's very dangerous.
You pull out a book of matches, you've got a gas can wide open. How do you keep the fire from starting, especially when you start playing with those matches? That's the metaphor that may fit in this situation.
Yeah, Putin apparently.
We're in the midst of a springtime of hope for America.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
Impulses of an evil empire.
Tear down this wall.
I believe that together we can keep this rendezvous with destiny.
In the next several minutes, you will learn things about President Ronald Reagan that you've never seen, heard, or read before. Welcome to today's special Newsmax event celebrating the life and legacy of President Reagan. During this historic presentation, we will commemorate President Reagan's storied life. We'll revisit his 2 terms in office and recollect his proudest achievements and greatest challenges. Ronald Reagan's life reads like a fairy tale of success stories. He was an accomplished athlete, an honored veteran, a famous actor, the governor of California, and of course, our nation's 40th president.
He called himself a citizen politician and only entered politics when he warned government was gaining too much power. By then he was age 54 with a successful career behind him. Twice elected President of the United States, Ronald Wilson Reagan was a contradiction to some, once a Democrat, then a Republican, a champion of smaller government whose own government grew, a fiscal conservative who failed to balance the budget. His critics mistook his affability for weakness, but behind the smile and the charm existed an extraordinary leader with unique skills and bold and revolutionary ideas.
We only had time to share just a few of the top defining moments in Ronald Reagan's presidency, but you'll get to see them all in Rendezvous with Destiny. By the way, the president's close relationship with the Pope is especially fascinating. You'll also learn how dealing with an alcoholic father helped shape Reagan's ability to negotiate. And if you ever wondered what the leader of the free world likes to get for the holidays, well, you'll find that out as well. So let's review today in this free offer. We are sending you a copy of Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny, and the collector's limited edition of our issue commemorating the 100th anniversary of President Reagan's birth.
Right now, when you subscribe to Newsmax magazine, you can own both the DVD and receive the special Reagan 100th birthday commemorative edition. That's $25 in bonus gifts when you subscribe. Go to newsmax.com/Reagan13 to subscribe today. Newsmax.com/Reagan13. Join the millions who read Newsmax magazine every month.
What can that be?
52-year-old male complaining of chest pains.
Clear.
If you suffer cardiac arrest outside of a hospital, you have just a 7% chance of survival.
Hi, my name is Dr. Crandall. As a cardiologist, I've dedicated the last 30 years to helping my patients win the fight against heart disease. That's why I wrote the Simple Heart Cure, to show you how easy it is to identify early warning signs, make simple heart-healthy changes, and reverse heart disease in just 90 days. You'll discover how to reduce your risk of heart attack by 61%, lower your bad cholesterol, unclog your arteries naturally, safely lower your blood pressure, and so much more. This easy-to-read book shows you how to make simple changes to protect your heart.
Dr. Crandall's best-selling book is available at bookstores everywhere, or go online to heartcure211.com and get your copy for just $4.95.
You're back with us now on America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
I'm John Bachman. Thanks for sticking around. J.D., let's talk about housing.
No place like home, and home construction suffering huge setbacks so far in 2014, with winter weather being blamed for delays and non-starts. But some figures suggest that more than the weather may be at work. Housing starts climbed in the South and Midwest last month from January, but fell in the Northeast and West. Starts plunged 37.5% in the Northeast, which experienced very harsh weather in February. But in the West, a major home building region spared extreme weather. Builders broke ground on 5.5% fewer homes last month. So, what are the real reasons behind the slow housing starts? And does a 7.7% rise in building permits signal a brighter outlook for the rest of the year? We're joined now via Skype by the CEO and founder of the Real Wealth Network, Kathy Fettke. Kathy, welcome to America's Forum.
Thank you.
Well, what do you attribute this decline in housing starts to, Kathy?
Well, we're all agreeing that in most of the country it does have to do with weather, and I think in a few months we're going to have a very different report when the country thaws out. But there's still many parts of the country where it's cheaper to buy an existing home than a new one. And when it really comes down to the dollar and prices have gone up, interest rates have gone up, it might be more affordable still to buy the existing home.
So you mentioned interest rates going up. We have had nearly historic lows for the past several years. Is that really putting the clamp on this, Kathy? What do you think?
Well, not for everyone, but for those who are really just barely able to qualify, it does make a big difference. And the new lending rules, the Dodd-Frank rules, have eliminated about 8% of the people who were able to get loans last year wouldn't be able to now because of the stricter regulations. And even though that's 8% is a fairly low number, it does mean a few 100,000 people who could no longer qualify for loans.
Yeah, it may sound like single digits, but there are real families involved here. And when an economy is sluggish already, when you have this kind of impact, it creates that situation. What I'm always interested in is the whole notion of home building, housing starts, and it seems that even during the best of times, there can be a lag between inventory and product and prospective buyers. Is that gap reemerging right now in 2014?
Again, it depends on where you are. We, at the end of the day, have to look at jobs and where are those jobs? Where's the job creation? Where are jobs leaving? And so we've got an area like Texas where there's massive job creation, And it's also been one of the areas where there's been the most building taking place as well to keep up with all that growth.
Kathy, we often talk about how you can't look at the housing market as one monolithic picture here in the United States, but we're going to do that a little bit, so bear with me because I want to talk about some new numbers that were just released yesterday from the National Association of Home Builders and Wells Fargo. This is the consumer index, or the confidence index of home builders, and it's at 47 right now. And normally when that number is below 50, it indicates that most home builders feel like we're still in a weak housing market. Do you agree with that?
You know, again, it does depend on where they are because, again, those building in Texas aren't feeling that way. They're building like crazy there. But in general, there are still lots of cities that where home prices are still 20% below what they were. And when a builder looks at the bottom line and if there's just not enough margin there, it doesn't make sense. So until a lot of that existing inventory sells, for example, in places like Ohio or Pennsylvania or Florida, where there's still a lot of leftover inventory hanging around, a lot of foreclosures yet to come, it's not going to make a lot of sense. Although our company is still looking at building in Florida, it's getting the process started can take years. And you're right, the timing of that is difficult because there might be, by the time you get the product up and running, it could be a very different market.
Kathy, as you mentioned, the correlation between job creation and housing starts, and we talked about the red hot situation in Texas. There's a state to the north in the upper Midwest where the climate is decidedly cooler, but the job market is red hot, and that's North Dakota. And when you talk about the demand there, given the energy exploration, it almost sounds like California during the gold rush, everyone flocking in there, and serious problems with housing starts in a state like North Dakota.
Yeah, lack of housing. And in fact, the U.S., we're discovering oil and gas everywhere now. I think we knew it was there. We didn't know how to access it. So this is happening in Nevada, in parts of Ohio, where now there are jobs, but not the houses to support those jobs. So, you know, it is always a scramble to figure out where are those jobs going and is there enough housing inventory and where are jobs leaving and is there going to end up being a glut?
Yeah,
so that's what we're always focused on.
Yeah, we're in a huge migration, if you will. A lot of people moving to North Dakota right now, and I think, Kathy, that has one of the most expensive housing markets in the country because of the energy boom there. But always fascinating to take a look at the housing and construction and real estate markets to see how they correlate with the overall economy. Kathy Fettke, CEO and founder of the Real Worth Network. Always great to have you with us here on America's Forum.
Thank you.
All right, thanks for joining us as well. Of course, we got to bring some other people into the show, JD, and those are our viewers who are writing in.
Absolutely. We need to hear what's on your mind. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, I think we have a few of those comments ready right now. Why don't we go to Rocky Mount? And again, this has to do with climate change. Rocky Mount weighing in. Amazing. Israel offers assistance, but Obama just wants to talk climate change while there. Disgusting, actually. I find it hard to believe he cares one whit about the people of this country.
Yeah, and even if you are not an advocate of traditional fossil fuels, when you look at how this is playing a role in the situation with Russia right now and the European dependency on Russian natural gas and oil, if there was a way to produce more and export more from the United States, as we've been doing over the last few years, but get that to Europe, it could really be a game changer and force Putin's hand and show how powerless he really is with this issue.
Many more of your comments coming up before you and I part company, or we part company with you.
That's right, we're all in this together, JD.
Exactly
Come
right.
on now.
Side by side together. Maybe not for, but together. Anyway, we'll have more of your comments. Here is the way you get them to us. You can tweet us your comments at Newsmax, hashtag America's Forum. You can check us out at facebook.com/Newsmax, or there's that tried and true email. Better do that before the UN puts a stamp on it or something. Here's the way you do it. Connect at newsmaxtv.com. Stay with us. There's more to come together.
That's right, JD,
Forum.
together after this.
When I was a young doctor, we were just learning about cholesterol and how too much of it could lead to a heart attack. We learned that there were three types of cholesterol: LDL cholesterol, which was bad, HDL cholesterol, which was good, and triglycerides. Now we know that not all bad cholesterol is the same. We learned that bad LDL cholesterol is comprised of two different types. One type is called pattern A, and the other type is called pattern B. And it's very important for you to know the type that you have. Feel free to pause the video and get a pencil to make notes. Pattern A LDL cholesterol is fluffy and bounces off the wall of your coronary arteries without damaging them. Pattern B LDL cholesterol is small and pellet-like and embeds into the walls of your coronary arteries, causing damage. To learn what pattern you have, you must ask your doctor for a blood test that is known as an advanced lipid screening test. Most of the time, doctors will not order it, but this is an important state-of-the-art cardiology test, and research shows that this information is key to determining who is at the highest risk for a heart attack. If it does turn out that you have the deadly pattern B type of bad cholesterol, don't despair. I found that taking 500 to 2,500 milligrams of vitamin B3 or niacin can change a harmful pattern B LDL cholesterol to a pattern A cholesterol. In this Heart Health Minute, I told you about the importance of advanced lipid screening and learning about your cholesterol risk. But there are other very important tests you need to know about as well. Since most of you are already reading my book, The Simple Heart Cure, I want you to go to Chapter 10 and read about the other must-have tests you should ask your doctor about if you are over the age of 50.
Get your copy of Dr. Crandall's best-selling book, The Simple Heart Cure, for just $4.95 with this special offer. Go to www.simpleheartbook.com to get your copy today. That's simpleheartbook.com.
Tonight we are a country awakened to danger.
Tear down this wall.
Not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character.
Ask what you can do for your country.
Attention seniors and baby boomers. A new website has been created just for you. MyBenefits811.com. At MyBenefits811.com, we reveal a weird trick that could help you add $152,000 to your Social Security payouts. For example, did you know how you file for Social Security can dramatically change the amount of money you collect? One simple step could add up to $1,000 to your monthly payouts. And other strategies we found reveal 33 ways for big savings on your health care. At MyBenefits811.com, you will also discover how you could save up to 50% on your groceries, along with 49 other ways to save as much as $50,000 starting today. Newsmax says MyBenefits811.com is a critical resource for anyone over the age of 50. So go to MyBenefits811.com now to find out how you could add extra money to your Social Security checks. That's MyBenefits811.com. MyBenefits811.com.
We're heading down the home stretch on America's Forum. I'm J.D. Hayworth.
And I'm John Bachman. And right now, at this time every day, we like to bring in our colleague who is up in New York City right now in Newsmax's studios there, Steve Malzberg, host of the Steve Malzberg Show. Hey, Steve, how you doing?
Good, gentlemen. John, J.D.
Well, Steve, a big topic on this show today has been that LigNet report, our Newsmax partner site, talking about the possibility, although be it small, the possibility that this plane might be in Pakistan. That, according to an unnamed official who has knowledge of someone who works for Boeing, of course. Steve, what's your best guess? I know you've been reading into this story. You've heard a lot of the analysis. What's your best guess on what you think happened to the plane?
Well, Pakistan is one of the places that certainly I think is plausible. I think they have a lot of problems with the United States and the West. And here's the deal. I think that if this was in the water, we would know about it by now. I think all the shenanigans lead to human intervention, and I think that what happened was this was obviously well worked out and pre-planned, and somewhere a country or a remote section of a country, a terrorist group in a remote section of a country, somebody cleared out a landing strip big enough for this to land, and I believe it landed. And I wouldn't be beyond the realm of possibility that our government and many others or some others might know where it is or have a great idea, but they're not going to say anything until they find it, and we'll hear one day that they found it. But I think it's going to be used. They want to use it for nefarious purposes. I think the crew, they probably made sure that the hostages or the passengers are dead, depressurizing the cabin or something like that. That's just my theory. And we're going to talk about it. We have Isaac Yefet, former security chief for El Al Airlines, coming up at the top of the show, right after the top of the hour. So, you know, we'll get his take on what he thinks could have happened. But that's my cockamamie theory.
Well, it's not so cockamamie anymore, Steve, and especially when we heard from Fred Fleitz, of the analyst for LigNet, and again offering some theories about Malaysian air security perhaps not being as thorough as it should be. And one thing we know about El Al and flying in Israel, very tight precautions taken with every passenger jet that El Al flies.
Yeah, and JD, one other thing.
Yeah, never had a...
One other thing JD brought up, Steve, and this will be interesting to get your guest take too, is Israel has been very weary about some sort of aircraft attack. We've heard that report as well. And also we heard from Fred about Al-Qaeda still being obsessed with airline-based terrorism attacks. So all good stuff coming ahead on the Steve Malzberg Show, and we'll, of course, be watching. Steve, thanks so much.
All right, gentlemen, good to talk to you.
And in addition to getting Steve's take, it's now your turn. We get your take on the whole notion of climate change and the involvement of Israel in offering some help. Let's go to, well, I'm not going to mention this name, even though I guess it shows up in Beowulf in one way, shape, fashion, or form. Wait, the Middle East produces farm crops? The only thing the Middle East produces is oil, period. If foodstuffs had to depend upon crops in the Middle East, we'd all be starving to death, the saying of the Big O. BHR, once we give the internet away, it goes away forever. We're not going to give away the internet.
No,
certainly not by tomorrow.
No, we'll be here tomorrow, right back. But stay tuned to the Steve Malzberg Show, which is next, coming to you from Newsmax TV and our studios in New York City. I'm John Bachman.
I'm JD Hayworth. Stay brave, stay free, stay tuned.
More than 76 million Americans are currently living with high blood pressure, but only about half of them have their blood pressure under control. Controlling blood pressure is mandatory because if it's not controlled, you're at great risk for such deadly conditions as heart attack, stroke, congestive heart failure, and kidney disease. Most doctors consider uncontrolled hypertension as an excuse to prescribe more medication. But there can be some hidden reasons why your blood pressure is persistently too high. To find out, here are the important questions you